was it of me? Philip asked again, a little more darkly this time. Man, listen, I don't know what's going on. I don't want to get involved, but I didn't say anything, Greg said quickly, finally looking up at Philip. What are you talking about? Philip asked. I'm in here a lot, Greg said to him. I see stuff, okay? What stuff? Philip pressed. The money, Greg said. Like I said, haven't said a thing. Don't want to get involved in whatever mess you're making for yourself. That's on you. So you know, huh? Philip said with a sigh. Yeah, it's pretty obvious, Greg replied. Surprised you're still able to get away with it. People here are blind. It's a good thing, Philip said as he walked over to Greg. But, like I said, my mouth is sealed, Greg replied defensively. Of course it is, because dead people can't talk. Wait, what? What do you mean by that? Philip! That night you determined to just switch off and try not to think about the case so that you could enjoy your time with Deku, and the two of you spent some time relaxing in the spa, then watching a movie before falling asleep in each other's arms. Early the next morning there was a sudden desperate knock on the door, and the manager met Deku with a grave face. I'm so very sorry, he said with a distraught look on his face, but there's been another death. What? You gasped from where you were walking out of the bathroom with a robe on. Who? When? The security guard, Greg. He was on shift last night and was found dead this morning at the shift changeover. Oh no, you gasped. Did anyone see anything? The manager shook his head. No, unfortunately, it's another mystery. Deku and the manager spoke for a little longer, and then the manager left. I think it's related, you said to Deku. I was the one that went down to the security office last night. What if Philip saw me go down there and found out about me getting the tapes and killed the guard? It's hard to prove, Deku said. Let's go down and see what the police on site say. You nodded and quickly got dressed to head downstairs. Then you and Deku left to attend the scene. Good morning, hero Deku, the attendant greeted Deku. It's a shame to see you again so soon under the given circumstances. What happened? Deku asked as he stepped up beside the attendant. It appears he was struck on the head from behind, he said, gesturing to the sheet that was covering the body on the ground. The same as how Maya was killed, you thought. It doesn't look like he put up a fight, so the person must have snuck up on him, the attendant continued. Or, you added in, he was put to sleep before he was struck. Is it early enough to have a reading on if the quirk was used or not? Deku looked from you to the attendant. Yes, we should be able to tell, the attendant replied. Even if it might be a gas quirk? You asked. Yes, it will still show up in the blood reports at this stage, the attendant commented with a nod. Is there someone you have in mind? You didn't know if you should answer that and remained silent, letting Deku take over. She is thorough, Deku replied in your stead. No leaf unturned. I see, the attendant replied, then called an officer over to ask them if they could get a blood sample of the deceased to the lab as soon as possible. You thanked both the policemen, then turned to Deku and addressed him in a whisper. I have an idea on how we can catch Philip, but I'll need your help. Deku gave you a curious look and you jerked your head for him to follow you to the door so you could talk without being overheard. This will be potentially dangerous, but it's the only way, you said to him. What is it? He asked, glancing around to make sure that no one was listening in. I'll play the scapegoat, and you put a wire on me and record anything he says. I have a feeling if I confront him in private and accuse him of killing Maya and the guard, he might confess, or try and kill me, but either way, if you get a recording, it's solid evidence. I don't like this idea at all, Deku said sadly. I can't put you in danger like that. But you're not putting me in danger. This is my idea. But I can't just stand by and let you do this. Listen, you said in a stern, low voice. This guy has killed 2 people, and he's getting away with it. We need to stop him. Deku's worried eyes bore into yours as you held his gaze with confidence, a very determined look on your face. Oh, I see so much of myself in her, he thought with an internal sigh. Please, you stated. It wasn't really a beg, it was more of a polite demand. Deku's shoulders softened. If I can have the local police on site as well, then I'll agree to it. But the second anything starts to go wrong, I'm coming in, he said to you. If anything happened to you, He hung his head, and you quickly reached out and cupped his cheek in your hand. Nothing will happen to me. You've always been there to save me. He looked up at you with tears in his eyes and nodded. This time will be no different. He reached out and took you around the waist and hugged you tenderly. After sharing an intimate cuddle in the hall, Deku stepped back into the security room to talk with the attendant while you waited outside. You thought you saw movement from the corner of your eye and looked down the hall to see Philip disappearing back around the corner so he wouldn't be seen. Just you wait, I'll get you, you thought. A few hours later, the blood results came back positive for a breathquake remnants. So, using this evidence, Deku asked the superintendent if you and himself could set up a trap to catch Philip, should he confess to his crimes if you were alone to him, and everything was set for the following day. Early that morning, 2 superior plainclothes policemen arrived on your hotel doorstep with the necessary gear to put a wire on you and other sound devices in the room. Deku was pacing back and forth, muttering things to himself while looking very worried as the policeman briefed you on the things that you couldn't say to Philip. The more they explained the severity of the situation, the more your guts started to knit themselves together a little. Code word is "aw shucks," the policeman, who was putting the hidden microphone on you, said. You never know what he might do to you if he thinks you're onto him and wants a quick way out. You glanced at Deku, who was still listening in from the sidelines and had a very serious look on his face. Okay, he said in a small voice, looking back at the policeman. Once everything was set, the police left, taking Deku with them. Yin, he said as he reached out and grabbed your arm, his serious and worried eyes meeting yours. I won't be far away, he said softly. I'll be here in a second if I feel like Philip is up to no good. You nodded, trying not to let the concern show on your face. The kiss that followed sealed your love for each other, ending with the security and reassurance that Deku would be there for you in your time of need. With one last lingering handhold, Deku left with the police, and you waited in the quiet room until you heard a voice in your earpiece. Can you hear me? The policeman asked. Yeah, you breathed. Okay, good. When you're ready. You took a few deep breaths in and reached for the phone on the stand, dialing the reception area and waiting for the receptionist to pick up. She did, and you plastered a giant grin on your face as you spoke. Hello, this is Mrs. Midoriya. I was wondering if I might be able to have a word with Philip Mistrust. Oh, yes, of course, the lady said. He's right here, I'll put him on. There was an exchange and Philip's voice came down the line. Yes, Mrs. Midoriya? He asked. Hi, Philip. Listen, I need to talk to you. My husband's gone out and I need to speak with you alone, if possible. It's in regards to Maya. There was a pause and then he spoke again. Yes, of course, I'll be right up. You hung up and waited nervously for him to arrive and nearly jumped out of your skin when he knocked on the door a few minutes later. Hi, you said with a small smile as you opened the door to him. He nodded and glanced past you into the empty room. Come in, you offered, breathing slowly to calm your racing heart. He stepped in and looked around suspiciously. What is it you need to talk to me about? He asked, watching you cautiously. Well, I need you to help me, you said. With? With some things that aren't holding up, you added softly. Regarding? He asked dubiously. Listen, you said, letting your whole body relax. My husband thinks you're innocent, but Philip stiffened. I heard a scream that night, you said, watching his face. Yes, we already spoke about the people who she was dealing with coming to get her, Philip replied sharply. But you said it was an accident, then a suicide, now murder? Why do you keep changing? You asked innocently. Well, it could have been any of them. How would I know? I left the party already, he replied tersely. Are you saying you suspect me of killing my own girlfriend? I'm just saying everything fits, he replied. And then, when I went to the guard's office... And so you think I killed the guard too? This is preposterous, he spluttered. What possible reason could I have for killing him? Well, what if he knew something about you that he shouldn't have, you offered. Philip's eyes widened. He told you, didn't he? He whispered. Well, you hummed, bluffing your way through this next part. The guards do see a lot, and I'm the wife of a hero, so of course they'd come clean. Philip paled. She threatened to tell I... Yes? you pressed, feeling like you were on the verge of a confession. Philip's very distraught look slowly faded, and an eerie, calm look covered his face in its place. She threatened to tell. What was I supposed to do? So you killed her? With a block of ice, so that no one would be able to find the weapon? Yes, Philip replied calmly. Why are you telling me this, you asked. You've just confessed to murdering your girlfriend, Maya, and the guard, Greg. Yes, I have, he replied darkly, a sinister smile pulling at his lips. Because you're not going to be around for much longer either. Oh, shucks, you yelled, stepping back away from him quickly. Before Philip could even breathe out, Deku had him pinned to the back wall, sharp green lightning jumping around him and filling the air with static electricity. You won't lay a finger on her, he growled menacingly, his scarred hand around Philip's throat as he held him in place. It was another 3 minutes before backup arrived, and they barreled into the room, huffing and puffing. Nobody move, they panted, pointing their guns around. Philip, you're under the arrest for the murder of Maya and Greg. Anything you say now can be used as evidence against you in the court of law. You have the right to a lawyer, and their voices carried on, becoming a distant, muffled blur as the adrenaline in your system shut you down. With rolling eyes, you dropped to the ground and passed out, your body being caught by your hero husband, who jumped to save you as soon as the police had cuffed Philip. The rest was a muddled, foggy dream. You vaguely remember hearing voices and feeling Deku's strong arms around you, and then you woke in the hospital, where they'd taken you for assessment. Baby, you croaked to Deku, who was sitting beside your hospital bed. Yin, he whispered with loving worry. Are you okay? You scared me. I feel fine, you whispered. Did they get him? Is it all over? It's all finished, baby. You did so well, Deku said as he leaned across the rails to hug you. Thanks to your evidence, Philip is being tried for a double homicide and will be behind bars for a very long time. It turns out that he was embezzling money from the hotel and replacing the stolen money with counterfeit, using Maya's blood. That's terrible, you gasped. I'm glad he's been caught. Deku nodded with tears in his eyes. And it's all thanks to you. You're a hero. You blinked. Never in your wildest dreams did you ever think you would be called a hero. You're always the one needing a hero, not the other way around. As you processed what Deku had said, you watched his eyes well up with tears. But please don't ever do that again, he sobbed, suddenly bursting into tears, the sheer amount of water running down his cheeks making the side of the bed wet. You were about to say something but choked up, allowing him to continue. When I heard him say that you... Shh, you hushed him, hugging him tighter as his body shook with the anguish of the thought of losing you. You saved me. You'll always be the true hero. My hero. The embrace was long and beautiful, and after spending another few hours here at the hospital, they discharged you and let you go. There was a lot of paperwork to be done post-drama, as well as a good chat with the manager of the plaza, who had no idea that Philip was stealing money and replacing it with counterfeit. Amazingly, he had managed to keep the media away and was eternally grateful to you, especially, for persevering and getting to the bottom of the crimes. Mrs. Midoriya, I am truly grateful for your honesty and straightforwardness in this case. Please, any time you're in New York, you and your husband Deku are more than welcome to stay here for free. Do not even consider anywhere else. He got down and bowed low to the ground, making you step back in fright. Please get up. It's fine, thank you. You looked at Deku for help, but he was just as flustered as you were. After accepting the manager's offer, you and Deku went back to your hotel room to rest. Wow, you sighed. What an insane few days. We solved a murder mystery. 2, Deku said brightly as he flopped down into the bed beside you. You reached your arms under his neck and pulled his body over on top of yours, smiling up at him as he smiled down at you. There was another soft moment shared between the two of you, then Deku pulled back and blinked a few times before looking away. Yin, when did you last get your, Deku asked in a soft voice, his face going bright red with embarrassment. My, time of the month, he whispered, basically mouthing it. He was so quiet. Suddenly it hit you. You hadn't gotten your period this month. Oh, you gasped. He looked at you, and you just stared at him. Oh, you said again, still staring at him. Should we get a pregnancy test? He asked, his eyes brimming with expectant tears. Are you crying again? You asked him. Don't cry. Is it happy tears or sad tears? Am I pregnant? I don't know, he replied. Are you? I don't know either. Is there a pharmacy near here? I think so. On the corner? I need to get a test, you said, putting your hands on his chest and pushing him off you as you got off the bed. Can you come with me? Of course, he said with a rapid head nod, grabbing his red shoes and putting them on. We'll need to get a test, then go to the doctor's if it comes back positive, then book in for a scan. But how are we going to do that on the island? Maybe we should cancel the island honeymoon. Would they take on patients here? I could. Izu. And then we need to tell our parents. Oh, my mum, she would be so... Izu. Names. If it's a girl, I'd love anything starting with a K. K is a nice letter. It's like Kachan's name. Izu. Baby, Izu. You waved your hand in front of his face, frantically trying to break him out of his ramble. He was well and truly head first down the rabbit hole now, and you had to metaphorically grab him by the feet and yank him out backwards. I haven't even gotten the test yet, you chuckled, taking his hand to snap him out of his monologue. Come on, let's go. You dragged him from the room and made the straightest line possible to the corner store. Neither you nor he spoke much on the walk there and back. You'd both internalized by that point, and were each thinking about different things. Once back in the hotel room, you pulled the pregnancy test packet out of the plastic bag and read the instructions while Deku fussed in the background, trying to see over your shoulder to read the leaflet, but also not wanting to butt into a very private moment. I'll be back, you mumbled, taking a test out and walking to the bathroom. Deku waited outside the bathroom nervously and was at the door the second he heard you flush. Yin, can I come in? He asked hesitantly. Do you know yet? What did the test say? Hold on, it's just running the test now, you said, walking to the door and opening it. He was in like a flash, his green eyes darting around the room and settling on the test that was resting on the side of the sink. Is it done yet? Is it finished? He asked as he walked over and looked at the screen. The little screen was still flashing, and you walked up beside him. It said it would say pregnant or not pregnant clearly in this little screen here when it was ready, you said, pointing to the flashing screen. But it also said the testing in the middle of the day or later in the day could give us a false negative because it can't detect the... Just then the screen stopped flashing and a very bold pregnant sign sat in place of the blinking black and white colours. The minute you saw it, you screeched, and Deku grabbed you in a hug, squeezing you to his body as he burst into tears for the second time that day. I'm pregnant? You screeched again, tears pricking the corners of your eyes as you heard Deku crying. I'm so happy, he sobbed. A baby! We're having a baby! You were both babbling messes for the next 20 minutes, you especially experiencing the full range of human emotions from, oh, I'm so excited, I'm going to be a mum, to, please, can we just rewind now? I'm not ready. And Deku was there to support you through every emotional stage you hit, giving you words of encouragement and love as you started to worry about motherhood. You couldn't sleep that night. Your mind was going 1,000,000 miles an hour, worrying about the future, wondering what motherhood would be like, planning everything in advance and living out imaginary situations. So by the time morning came around, you were smashed. Baby? Deku whispered in a husky voice as he rolled over and snuggled into you the next morning, kissing along your shoulder and up your neck, then smiling and sighing happily. You smiled sleepily and drifted back off to sleep as he slowly woke. A few times he tried to talk to you, but you were fading in and out of dreamland, so eventually he quietly got out of bed and made himself a decaf mocha and let you sleep. When you woke next, the afternoon sun was streaming in through the blinds, and you sat up straight in bed and stared at the soft yellow rays as they illuminated the carpet at the end of the bed. You're awake, Deku said happily from the lounge. You looked at him. Yeah, you said in a daze. He smiled and got up, walking over to the bed and crawling up on the end of it and into your open arms. You lay back with him half on top of you and sighed as you ran your hands through his curly locks, staring at the ceiling. Sorry, I didn't sleep well last night, so I was tired today, he said softly. Don't apologize, he said kindly. Your body needs to rest too. You nodded, your mind immediately going back to pregnancy and babies. Oh, Todoroki called. The weather is clearing on the island, so our flight is planned for tomorrow morning, Deku said happily. One more whole week on a secluded island. Lots of fun, you giggled mischievously. But what about the baby? Deku asked nervously, his clear, shining eyes looking up into yours. You can still do it while pregnant, you replied. I read about it once in a magazine you were featured in. I think it was called Hero Girlfriend magazine. You know, the typical teen, young adult mag. You can? He asked with surprise. You nodded. Yeah, they had a doctor debunking myths. Oh, well, that's a relief, Deku said with a relieved smile. You hugged him, giggling as you did so. The next morning you signed out of the plaza and said your goodbyes to the manager and staff before hopping into a limousine provided by Todoroki and then made your way to the airport. You and Deku were taken around the back end of the runway, allowed onto a private plane, ready to head to the island. Now, the captain said, back to you and Deku as you sat down in the seat behind him. The island I'm taking you to doesn't have a runway, so I'm going to drop you off at a larger island nearby, then you'll catch a boat to your island. Okay, you said, settling into your seat. It was a much smaller plane, a propeller plane, and the pilot explained that these ones were much better for flying among islands because they were more agile and thus able to move easily in and out from some of the taller mountains that grew on the islands there. It's a smaller collection of islands, he explained as he taxied the plane down the runway, threw the throttle forwards and took to the skies. The plane, being a lot smaller than the giant Airbus that you had arrived in New York on, banked hard to the left, and you gripped onto the armrests and braced with fright. So we need to be able to dodge around them a little bit, the pilot said, continuing his sentence as he flicked some switches. You took a sharp breath in when he pushed the plane's nose down and dropped it a few metres, then levelled out and smiled back at you. All smooth from here, he said. Won't be long. It's about a half-hour flight. You looked at Deku, and he reached across and held your hand, giving you his beautiful, reassuring smile. That was the longest half-hour you'd ever experienced. The plane was flying so low, or so it seemed, to the water, that you thought you could see dolphins and sharks swimming around in there. And as you nervously checked out the window again, the pilot called your attention to himself. Getting close now, he called casually. You looked past him, out the front window, and saw a small amount of islands dotting the horizon, some of them very flat, while others had tall mountains and dormant volcanoes on them. Almost there? You asked, praying that by asking it would magically shorten the flight. The pilot banked the plane hard to the right, and you inhaled, digging your fingertips into the back of Deku's hand, eyes glued on the view out the front window. Gotta get around this one, the pilot said, obviously referring to the massive dormant volcano on the island ahead. You nodded, your throat going dry as he dipped the plane and tipped back to skirt around it. You looked out your window and stared wide-eyed at the cliffs as the plane scooted neatly around it. Poor Deku's hand was being crushed, as you still hadn't let go, and he winced as your nails dug in more. The pilot then revved up the engine and climbed a little higher, pulling the steering wheel back to make the plane turn skyward. Again you sucked a horrified breath in, and held it as he levelled out again. Hang on, gets a little rough here, the pilot said, just managing to clear some dense forest below. All of a sudden the plane shuddered and shook, the roar of the engine making your ears hurt. Just a bit of turbulence, the pilot called back to you. Yin? Deku asked, blood seeping from where your nails had pierced his skin. You were petrified as the pilot expertly dodged all kinds of Mother Nature's blockades, and eventually he evened out, and ahead on the ground was a very short runway on the side of a beach. And down we go, he said, pushing the nose of the plane down and dropping from the sky at an alarming rate. It was such a fast descent that your stomach flipped and got lodged in your throat, and you let out a gasping scream, and so did Deku as you dragged his skin off the back of his hand. In just another few short minutes you had landed on one of the most picturesque island beaches you'd ever seen. Oh God, you panted. My hand, Deku whimpered, waiting for you to let him go. You quickly let go of his hand and looked at its mangled form. I'm so sorry, you gasped when you saw what you'd done to his hand. Okay, all out, the pilot said with a smile as he stopped the plane's propellers and hopped out onto the wing, then dropped down and opened the side door of the plane. With shaking legs, you got down onto the sand and turned to watch Deku get down behind you. His hand was bleeding pretty badly, but he still didn't hesitate to grab you when it looked like you were about to fall over. Looks like your boat is here, the pilot said, as he lifted your luggage from the side panel of the plane. You looked at him, then over to where he gestured, and smiled when you saw a quaint little boat with 2 people standing neatly beside the on-ramp. "Thank you for the trip," you said to the pilot as you took your bags from him and bowed. "Yes, many thanks," Deku added with his own bow. The pilot smiled. "My pleasure. I'll be back same time next week to get you." You paled, your small smile quivering a little. "I won't keep you any longer," he said, bowing once more before walking back to the doors of the plane and hopping back in. You and Deku looked at each other before heading over to the moored boat to greet the 2 who were waiting for you. The pair bowed as you and Deku got closer, and your hero husband bowed to them in return. "How do you do?" the male of the pair asked politely. "It is our pleasure, as staff of the Todoroki household, to escort you to your private island getaway." "Thank you kindly," you said with a smile, greeting the female of the pair happily when she smiled back at you. Once pleasantries were done, you hopped aboard and sat down, ready for the boat ride to your secluded hotel. As the boat jumped to life, you looked over the side at the pure white sand underneath and kept watching as you got further and further out. The iridescent blue waters were so clear it was almost as if you were floating over the ocean floor, and below small schools of fish shimmered along, their scales glinting as their tails flickered back and forth lazily, pushing them through the warmed waters of the tropical paradise. The male driver of the boat was giving Deku some details about the stay, and Deku was asking many questions, so you let him be and looked out across the water. "It's whale season," the female host said as she sidled up and sat down. "If you hear them at night, it's considered good luck." "Oh," you replied with a smile, "that's very cute. I'd like to see a whale up close." She smiled. "It's very lovely out here. I do enjoy accompanying any of the Todoroki members to this island." "I bet," you replied enthusiastically. You looked ahead, out the front of the boat, and saw the island in the mid-distance, with a wooden slat house up on the sands and a grassed section out the front. The island itself was small, and from where you were on the boat it looked like you could walk around the whole island in about a half hour. "Here is your stay," the male said as he nosed the boat up onto the shoreline. "We will bring your bags." The female quickly placed the ramp down from the side of the boat and helped you across onto the soft white sand while Deku followed afterwards, hiding his bleeding hand in his shorts pocket. You were ushered to the front door, where it was unlocked and pushed open for you, and Deku entered. The place was stunning. It looked to be modelled off a very old-style Japanese house with tatami mats lining the floor. "This is beautiful," you said to Deku as you took your shoes off at the door and stepped in. It was an open-plan, large lounge room area, sitting a step down from the rest of the place, that looked out over the beach through lovely large glass windows. Around the perimeter of the lounge area was a step up to get to the dining table and kitchen that was again all open so that you could have a conversation from the kitchen to lounge area without any walls in the way. "Please allow me to show you to your room," the female said once she'd given you enough time to take in the sights of the main area. She walked up beside the kitchen and headed through an archway into the back rooms, the archway opening into a smaller open lounge that overlooked a beautiful backyard and granite hot springs pool that was being fed by a small stream. "Oh wow," you said, a little stunned by how beautiful it was. "The water is solar heated, so you can have a swim at night and be comfortable," the female said with a smile. "It's gorgeous," you breathed again, stopping at the window to take a better look. There were no fences out the back because, well, only the sea and air creatures would see you out here. Further on down the hall the rooms branched off to the left and right, but the female led you and Deku to the room at the very end of the hall. "This is the master bedroom," she said, pushing the door open and stepping back to let you in. The room was very spacious, with a large glass window overlooking the beach again, and small palm trees casting a decent amount of shade over that side of the room to block the harsh rays. "It's amazing," you said again. This whole place was taking your breath away. "Please allow me to show you the ensuite," the female said, gesturing to a door nearby. You followed her and she pushed the door open to reveal a large waterfall shower and spa on the other side. "This place is so amazing, I'm about to cry," you thought, standing there speechless in the doorway. Deku was just as awestruck as you were, and was looking around in amazement. After she had let you look around a little, she walked to the bedroom door to leave. "The pantry has been stocked for your stay, and you are encouraged to eat everything provided," she said with a small bow. "We all want you to enjoy your stay here." "Oh, I'm sure we'll have a wonderful time," you said emphatically. "Yes, of course," Deku added in. Thank you so much for your help. It's our pleasure. Please do not hesitate to call if you need us. We will be on the main island, she said with another bow before leaving. Just another warning before we start, this chapter does have an adult scene which I have cut out as I usually do. I will put the links in the description for this chapter. It's quite a large adult scene that I've cut out, but it will just continue on as if it never happened in this listener audio version. You and Deku followed her back to the front door and saw her off, waving happily to the pair as they pushed offshore and left for the day. The drone of the boat engine disappeared off into the distance, and you sighed happily, turning to Deku. He pulled his injured hand from his pocket to hug you, but your eyes caught sight of it and you gasped loudly. Oh, I forgot about your hand. Let me fix it up. Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry, Izu. That flight was so scary. You turned and ran to the kitchen to see if they had any bandages or first aid kit. In true hero family household fashion, they had a monster-sized first aid kit, and you dug through it, pulling out antiseptic and band-aids for your poorly husband. It's really not that bad, Deku said softly as he watched you get items. It's terrible. Let me fix it up. You put all the items aside and then closed the first aid container and placed it back on the bottom shelf of the cupboard and stood up. Come and sit down so I can bandage your hand up. Deku conceded and followed you to the lounge, sitting down and presenting his hand to you. Gently you took it and looked at the 4 very prominent fingernail marks in the back and sides of his hand, and a worried look crossed your face. I didn't even realize I was causing this much damage, you said sadly. If I was able to help by letting you hold my hand, then I'm happy, Deku said tenderly, looking at you from under his bouncy curls. You looked up into his eyes and softened. When I'm with you, everything ends up being not as bad as I first thought, you said, with a half smile. I would have been screaming myself to death in that plane had you not been there. Well, these marks make me happy then. He looked back down and watched you gently dab antiseptic over the wounds, and then applied band-aids to each. There, he said when you'd finished. All done. I feel better already, Deku said with a grin. You smiled lovingly at him and scooted closer so you could kiss his nose. He let you do this, then smiled lovingly and returned your kiss, kissing your nose, then your lips. The way his warm lips moved against yours caused heat to build in your core, and you shifted a little closer to him and chased his lips with yours as he pulled back. He gently wrapped his arms around you and pulled you into his lap. It was well and truly night time when you woke, and it was the coolness of the night air that pulled you from your slumber. Rolling away from Deku, you sat up and swung your legs off the bed, looking out the large window to the ocean that was a stone's throw away. The moon was full, and cast its magical glow on the waters, causing you to go into a faraway stare as you sat there idly. Deku roused and felt around for you, but being unable to feel you, popped an eye open and looked around. It's night, he croaked sleepily, sitting up and looking at your silhouette form. Want food? You asked back over your shoulder. I'll see what they have here. Deku nodded and rubbed his eyes with the palms of his hands, his curls sticking up everywhere. Cute, he giggled, twisting around to kiss him on the nose before getting off the bed and walking out into the rest of the blacked-out house. Swiping down the walls aimlessly, you finally found the light switch and flicked the kitchen lights on, then walked to the fridge. Todoroki had already organised food to be delivered to the island, and there was an assortment of delicious pastries in the fridge, both sweet and savoury. Oh, yum, you called happily. Babe, they have heaps of food in the fridge here. Oh? Deku asked as he walked down in a pair of track pants, his bare torso looking as fit as ever. Come and look, you said, still in absolutely nothing, all that ass hanging out. Deku walked over behind you and wrapped his arms around your waist, resting his chin on your shoulder as he gazed into the open fridge before you. Oh, there is so much food, he exclaimed. I know, you said happily. What one do you feel like? I'll heat it up. You each picked out a pie to eat and placed it in the oven to cook. We should go into the hot springs pool out the back later, you said. This place is so amazing. I don't want to leave. It would be peaceful to live here, Deku agreed. But we need to get back to the mainland when we're done, because we have a little one on the way. He gave you a loving look, and then reached out to pull you in for a cuddle. You returned his embrace and sighed happily to yourself. This time next year, there'll be 3 of us. After having a lovely dinner, you both hopped into the pool outside, relaxing under the palms and talking idly together. It was the most perfect end to a perfect day, minus the flight. The next morning you woke to the sun streaming in the window and looked out to see dolphins jumping past. In a flurry of excitement you jumped out of bed and ran for the front door to watch them go. There appeared to be a small pod of them, all frolicking around in the waves as they passed by, and you stood there with a grin on your face as you watched them. "What is it?" Deku asked as he walked up behind you and kissed you on the head. "Dolphins," you said with a smile, tilting your head back to look up at him. He looked down at you and then back at the dolphins, and his eyes lit up. "They have a baby with them," he exclaimed, and you dropped your head to look at them again. Just then the little one jumped out, and you gasped with excitement. "Aw, it's so cute." Deku hugged you, his hands pressing gently over your stomach. You wrapped your hands over the top of his and smiled happily. "I'll have a belly one day soon," he said softly, looking down at your very unpregnant-looking self. "I can't believe there's a little one growing in there." "It's going to be wonderful," Deku said softly, holding you as tenderly as he could while the dolphins passed the island and headed off into the unknown blue ocean. "What were you like as a child?" you asked him, leaning your head back against his chest so you could look up at him. "I think I was just an average kid," he replied with a sweat-dropped smile. "Mostly happy, and I really wanted to be a hero when I grew up." His eyes lit up as he remembered that passion. "I'd always play hero, and had a heap of all-might onesies that I'd put on and pretend I was saving people. He always saved people with a smile, so I wanted to do the same." Your face glowed as you watched him talk about his childhood memories. "What about you, Yin?" he asked, snapping himself out of his memories and looking down at you. "Oh, I've talked about growing up a lot," you said with a chuckle, "but I feel like this little one's going to be more like you, so I want to know what I'm in for." Your cheeky smile made him grin. He let you go and walked over to the lounge, gesturing for you to come and lay down next to him. You did, and the two of you chatted the morning away. Then you got up to scavenge for lunch. There was still a ton of food in the fridge, so you pulled all of it out and set it up, even chopping up some strawberries and starting up the fondue set. "I don't care that it's around lunchtime. Let's have a chocolate and fruit feast," you announced happily. After lunch, you and Deku went for a swim in the clear, cool waters, and then napped in the hammocks under the palm trees and finished with a walk in the sun. "Another perfect end to another perfect day," you sighed. As you and Deku made it around the whole island and were heading back home, a small family of lemurs walked out from the tree line and made their way down to the water's edge to wash and play. You and Deku stopped to watch as a mother lemur carried 3 smaller babies on her back, the father one bringing up the rear and grunting at any babies if they jumped off their mother's back. "Poor Mum looks like she's worn out," you giggled to Deku, holding his hand as you waited for them to pass. "A family of 3 kids is nice," Deku commented. You hummed, watching as one baby lemur pushed another one off the mum's back and a squabble started. "I think maybe 2, you said with a chuckle. "I'm happy with 2, a girl and a boy," Deku said. "I was an only child, and at times it was lonely, but I had school friends, so that helped." You nodded and continued to chat as you passed the lemur family and kept on your way home. The next day you went for a walk again, in the morning, and saw the lemur family in the trees near the house, eating fruit from the flowering plants and shrubbery, and you watched them for a little while. "That middle lemur, the middle-sized one of the babies, is really cheeky," you chuckled to Deku when you saw it offer some food to the youngest and then drop it before the littlest one could grab it properly. Deku chuckled. "I've heard there's always one who's a little different and cheeky." "Yeah, I'm probably that one in my family," you giggled. "It's a good thing," Deku replied. "The cheeky one always has more personality." He looked up at the lemurs again and smiled. "I'm going to name that one Zurai, for mischief." "Zurai the lemur," you said. "I like it. What about the other ones? We need to give them names as well." Deku thought, sinking his chin into his hand as he stood there pondering. "He's putting a lot of thought into it," you thought with an amused look on your face as you watched him from the corner of your eye. "The oldest of the babies is very dependable. I've seen that one helping the mum out a lot. So something like reliable?" "Shinrei Naaru. Shin, for short," Deku said. "And the littlest one is just cute." "Kawaii," you said happily. "Kawa for short." "Shin, Zurai, and Kawa," Deku said with a smile. "I like that." You left the lemurs to themselves and headed back home to have some breakfast. It was another beautiful day in paradise, and you and Deku alternated swimming, making love, eating and sleeping, and all in all, you were both feeling very much relaxed. "Did you want to watch a movie tonight?" Deku asked as he held you in his arms after you'd both had an afternoon romp between the sheets. "That sounds good. Have they got movies here?" I saw the passcode for Netflix written down, so we can watch something on Netflix if you like," Deku said. "Yes, let's see what they have. I'll get some dinner and then we can go for another walk and then watch a movie," you said happily. "I like that idea," Deku replied, getting up with you. "I'll help with dinner." You busied yourselves in the kitchen together making food when you both heard noises from outside. "What's that?" you asked Deku, stopping what you were doing and looking up. "I don't know," Deku said, putting his knife down and walking to the front door, then outside. You let him go and waited for his return so you could ask what it was, but instead of a calm Deku returning, a frantic Deku came racing back in through the front door. "It's Zerai! Zerai's stuck!" he cried in a panic. "Help! Go and help! What happened?" you cried back quickly, putting your things down and making your way around the bench to where he was. "I don't know. I came out and I saw Zerai tangled in some netting and... It's okay, show me," you said quickly. Deku led you outside and around to the trees where the lemurs were all milling around worriedly, while Zerai was hanging, limp, tangled in the netting that had been set up to stop them from getting fruit in one section of the tree. "It's too high up for me to reach," you said worriedly. "Izzy, please get up there and untangle Zerai." Deku clicked into hero mode and ran to the base of the tree and started to climb. You watched, hands pressed to your mouth with nerves on edge as Deku skillfully scaled the tree. "Careful," you called with brows scrunched in grave concern. Deku slowed as he got closer to Zerai and turned to look at the mum and dad lemur. "It's okay, I'm a hero," he said, and his very calming words of reassurance to the lemurs made your face relax a little. Even in the middle of a crisis with animals, he still tell them that he's there to help, you thought with a small smile. Then Deku turned back to Zerai and lifted the little lemur up so that he could assess what had happened. With nimble fingers he pulled at some of the netting and slipped it off from the small lemur's head, while the parents made noises of concern in the background. I don't think I was fast enough," he said sadly, as he wrangled the rest of the netting off the poor little lemur's body. "Bring it down here," you said, your heart aching for the rest of the furry family, who still didn't know what was going on and were making a lot of noise as Deku climbed down with the little creature in hand. "Pass it here," you said softly, when he got to the bottom of the tree and took the little one in your hands. The body was still warm, but very limp, and your already breaking heart shattered into shards and fell into your shoes. Your eyes welled up as you cupped the little body to your chest. "I'm sorry," Deku said sadly, his eyes brimming with tears as he embraced you and the little black and white ball of fluff. Just then you felt movement and quickly looked down through teary eyes at the little bundle. Zerai stirred and you gasped with excitement. "Zerai's alive!" you said quickly, turning and running to the house. "I need the first aid kit." "Are there any cuts and scrapes?" Deku asked as he ran after you. "I don't know, I'll check in a second," you replied as you raced into the house, the sound of the sad and confused lemur family still in the tree, making you want to help the little one and get it back to its mum and dad as soon as possible. Once inside, Deku looked up lemurs on his phone and did his best to find out what they ate so he could make some kind of mush to feed to Zerai. So while he was doing that, you checked the little creature over for cuts and breaks. Thankfully, the little one had no broken bones and wasn't bleeding, but must have been choked by the netting and was taking a while to come around. So, according to the Wikipedia page, lemurs eat flowers, trees, bark, fruit, Deku listed. "I can get some fruit from outside and bring it in to make a mush of some kind." "Yes, please," he said softly. "Poor little thing. It just needs some food." Deku nodded and put his phone down, then walked out the door and started looking for some flowers and fruits to make food with. He came back in with fruit from the tree that the lemur family had been in, and also a flower or two from the same tree. "Here," he said, handing the items to you. "Thank you," you said, taking them and handing the little lemur to him for him to hold while you made some food. "I'll mush these up and then syringe it into the lemur's mouth," he said, quickly grabbing a syringe from the kit and then getting to work mushing the fruit and flowers in a bowl with some water. After successfully pulverizing the fruit and flowers, you sucked up some of the juice with the syringe and walked over to where The slightly more alert little bundle was sitting in Deku's hands. Okay. You presented the syringe to Deku, and he looked at it, then at you. I don't know how to feed it, he said with a worried look on his face. Can you try? I don't know how to either, you replied, but I'll give it a go. With a slightly shaky hand, you held the syringe to the mouth of the little creature, and it looked up at you as you bumped its mouth with the tip of the plastic. Come on, you coaxed. Just a little. Gently prying its lips to open a bit, you pushed the tip of the syringe in and squirted some of the liquid contents onto its tongue, and it eagerly swallowed it down, its tiny tongue flicking back and forth over the tip of the syringe to get more out. You squirted all of the mixture out, and then went back to get more, which was eagerly received by the little lemur, who had gotten up and was peering at you over the side of Deku's hand. "Aw," you cooed softly when the little baby didn't try and run away once it was feeling better. "So cute. But we should probably take this little one back to its parents. They're probably worried about it." Then you paused. "I hope they don't reject it because they can smell us on it." Deku looked at you worriedly, then down at the little creature in his hands. I hope not as well," he said softly, turning carefully to the front door. You put the syringe back on the table, then followed him outside, looking up into the tree near the house to see if the rest of the family were there. They were, and you smiled optimistically as they made their way closer to the branches that overhung where you were walking, chattering away. The little one in Deku's hand made a happy noise and looked like it wanted to jump out of his hand, so he quickly crouched down and held his hands to the ground so it could get out if it wished. It did, and ran off quickly to the tree, then clambered up as the rest of the family came to greet it. "Aww," you hummed as the mother lemur raced down the tree, grabbed the little one close, sniffing it over and making small noises of affirmation. Deku cupped his arm around your shoulders and pulled you into his side, sighing happily as you both watched the reunited family. "I'm glad Zerai's okay," Deku said softly. "I don't know what I would have done if... Well, there's no need to worry now because all is well and it's back with its family," you said, looking up and kissing Deku on the cheek. You two hugged lovingly under the tree, watching Zerai and the family jump around up there, gathering food and chattering with each other. "Shall we go back inside?" you asked Deku after a while. "We were in the middle of making food." "Oh, yes we were, weren't we?" Deku replied with a smile. "I can definitely eat now that that's done." "You can't eat when you're sad or nervous?" you asked him, turning and heading back to the house. "Sometimes," he replied, your voices fading away from the happy lemur family as you went back to the house to eat. For the rest of your time on the island you kept an eye on the lemur family, making sure they were okay, especially Zerai, and after a few days they'd come and take food from your hands. As your honeymoon drew to a close, you started to feel a little sad that you'd be leaving Zerai and the little family behind, and Deku was feeling it too. "What happens if Zerai gets caught again and no one's here?" Deku announced one night after he'd been very quiet for a while. "Have you been worrying about them too?" you asked with a sad smile, leaning over and giving him a hug. "You've been thinking about them as well?" he asked with surprise. "I thought it was just me." "We can tell Todoroki about them when we get back. He might have a plan in place," you said with a loving smile. "You're going to be such a good dad, Izu. You're so caring and protective." He blushed and smiled up big. "That's what I'm aiming for, to be the best dad ever." He gently placed his hand on your belly, and you shared a deep, passionate kiss. The island slowly faded in the distance as the complimentary boat sped you and Deku away from your island getaway the next day, the spray from the clear water reminding you that none of this had been a dream. "Did you enjoy your stay?" the female assistant who dropped you off asked with a pleasant smile. "Yes, we got to know the lemur family on the island too," you said with a soft smile, glancing at Deku, who gave you a loving look from where he was sitting across from you. "Ah, yes. The Todoroki family set up this island as a sanctuary for lemurs. As you are probably aware, lemurs can only be found natively on Madagascar, but this island has the same climate and has the same foods that they enjoy, so that family was brought here to live peacefully. They are used for observation for scientists who want to know more about them, so official people frequent this island weekly. We told them to cease their activities for this week while you and your husband were staying here." Your heart fluttered, and a calm smile graced your face as you looked from her to Deku, who shared the same smile. "I'm very happy to hear that," Deku said with a smile. She nodded, and the ride continued back to the main island. The small plane that brought you in was waiting on the runway, and your stomach churned with nerves when the boat landed on the shoreline. "Welcome back," the pilot called happily with a wave. "Hi," you replied in a worried voice, hanging back as much as possible. Deku took your hand in his and squeezed gently. "Don't worry, I'm here. I'll protect you," he said softly. You nodded and relaxed a little, then said your goodbyes to the couple who had brought you from the island on the boat, and turned back to the plane. Deku helped you into your seat and held your hand the whole time. "Baby," he whispered shyly, soft enough that the pilot couldn't hear him, as he was still a little shy to call you baby in front of people. You looked at him, fear etched into your face. "Just look at me," he whispered, taking his free hand and stroking your cheek. "I'll guide you through this." You nodded, locking eyes with him. "Okay, folks," the pilot said in an upbeat voice as he hopped into the pilot seat and started pressing buttons and flipping switches. "I'm gonna have to go straight in the clear and draft at the end of the runway. Then we're gonna bank pretty hard to get around the mountain, but after that it's just a little left, little right, and then back off to New York." Deku smiled at you as you kept staring into his eyes. "Ready when you are, Captain," he said to the pilot without breaking eye contact from you. The pilot turned the engines on, and you gripped Deku's hand a little tighter. He felt your panic and leaned in, pressing his lips to yours. All that you became aware of was his lips, and your eyes fluttered shut as you melted into his kiss. The plane started to move and you broke away from the kiss, looking out the front window, around the pilot. It's okay," Deku said in a calm, soft voice. "Look at me. Everything will be just fine." You looked back at him, and your face grimaced as the plane got faster and faster, then finally took off, shooting straight up into the sky. Deku reached across as far as he could and wrapped an arm around your shoulders, trying to give you a cuddle. "Remember how we whoa!" The plane banked to the right, and you let out a little scream of fear. Even Deku had to grab onto his seat. "Sorry, we're all good, just need to get up over this updraft," the pilot said calmly, pulling on the steering wheel as hard as he could. "We went for lots of walks," Deku said to you to get you to look at him. "The sunsets were beautiful, right? What colours were your favourite?" Your eyes flicked from Deku to out the front window and you gasped with fear as the plane banked again to dodge another mountainside. "Look at me," Deku said urgently, squeezing your hand. You looked at him, eyes begging for him to just make it all stop. "Baby," he said softly, "close your eyes. Think about the sunsets." You swallowed thickly and shut your eyes, pulling forth the sunsets that you had seen hand in hand with Deku. "Go back there with me," he whispered to you, leaning over the arm of his chair so he could press his forehead to yours. "Let's go back to our happy place." Tears welled in your eyes. It had indeed been a happy place. So many wonderful things happened in such a short space of time, and you relived every second, from late-night love to giggling together for no reason. Then your eyes flew open and you looked at Deku. "We didn't see any whales," you said sadly. Just then the pilot called to you both. "I'm just going to drop a little lower because we have a pod of whales below and they're breaching." In your eagerness to see the whales, you let go of Deku's hand and looked out your very small plane window just as the plane tilted to the left. There below were a group of 6 whales with 2 calves. "Oh!" you exclaimed with excitement as one jumped straight up out of the water towards the plane as you flew overhead. "Wow," Deku said softly from his side of the plane, watching as another raised its tail from the water and smacked it down again. Your fear of the small plane melted away as you watched the whales frolic below, looking further and further back until they disappeared from view. "And now it's just straight flight to New York," the pilot said. And indeed it was. It was a very calm flight the rest of the way, and you bade the pilot goodbye and departed the plane, then walked down the steps to the limousine once landed in New York. "Good day, Mr. and Mrs. Midoriya," the driver greeted politely as he opened the side door for you and Deku. "I trust you had a lovely time away." "A wonderful time," you said with a bright smile. "Back to the grind we go, though." "You look refreshed," the driver said as he closed the door for you and hopped into the driver's seat to take you around to the connecting flight back home. The last leg of the journey was very long and tiresome, and you and Deku slept most of the way, then pulled your weary asses off the plane and caught a taxi home at 4 a.m. Oh, when do we have work? You asked him through a yawn as he opened the front door to the apartment. Not today, I hope. No, tomorrow, he replied, giving you a lazy hug as you stepped in. It's been such a long time since we were here. I'm still so smashed, you mumbled, face planting into his shirt. Let's rest, he said, taking you with him to the bed. It was 3 p.m. when you woke next and you sat up groggily. Ugh, my sleeping pattern is all out of whack, you mumbled, getting out of bed. Doctors, Deku mumbled, trying to reach for your Plus Ultra limited edition Deku sleeping shirt to stop you from walking away. We need to book to see the doctor. 4? Deku looked at you. Oh, baby, that's right. Yes, I'll see if we can get in today, you said, heading off to have a shower before doing anything else. Thankfully, you got a booking right away, and at 4:30 p.m, you and Deku were sitting in the doctor's office at the usual clinic that you went to. Mr. and Mrs. Midoriya, the doctor greeted. Congratulations on your wedding a few weeks back. What can I do for you? The glint in the doctor's eye told you that he already suspected that you were carrying Deku's baby. Well, you said to the doctor as he closed the door to give you some privacy, I think I might be pregnant. Congratulations, the doctor said with a grin. Let's make sure. I'll get another pregnancy test and we will do a blood test to back it up. You nodded and followed his orders, and after confirming again that you were pregnant, you left to await the blood results. I'll have the results in a few days so we can go from there, you said happily to Deku. We'll have to start setting up a place for the baby too. I think I want to have him or her in the room with us. I'd like that too, Deku said with a soft smile, reaching out to embrace you again. 3 days later you got the results. You were 8 weeks pregnant. Naturally, you were booked in for the 8-week dating scan and everything was going beautifully with your baby. You were glowing. Back to work you and Deku went, with your precious little secret that was being kept quiet between the two of you. Being a first-time mum, you wanted to do everything right, so you avoided raw fish, sushi, soft-serve ice cream, soft cheeses, etc. And that was what gave you away one day in the staff room at work a few weeks on from the dating scan. It was another ordinary day, and the receptionist popped her head into your office to see how you were doing. Hi Yin, just wanted to let you know there's a cheese platter in the staff room, if you wanted some. We're celebrating a birthday. Oh, yeah sure, I'll be in a little later, you said politely. We're going to sing happy birthday soon, so do you want to come now? She asked. Deku is already in there. Oh, he is? Okay, I'll be in a second. She smiled and left, and you got up to go to the staff room. Ugh, I feel a little bloated today, you thought as you looked at your side profile in the mirror before leaving your room. Well, I am about 10 weeks now, so I might start showing soon. Smoothing down your outfit, you left and headed down to the staff room. Deku gave you a bashful smile as you entered and held your hand as you came up beside him. The birthday person was in the room and a round of congratulations was offered to them, then a few speeches happened and lunch commenced. Unfortunately for you it was sushi, a cheese platter and a few other things, so you picked out the safest option and sat down next to Deku. From across the room the receptionist smirked to herself and ate her food, intending to talk to you later. After lunch you headed back to your office to finish off a few things and make a few more bookings for Deku, then prepared to leave for the day. Yin, the receptionist greeted as she walked in and closed the door behind her. Hey B, you greeted her. What's up? Hey, she said, lowering her voice to catch your attention with the way she said her hey. Are you pregnant? I just noticed you completely avoided the cheese and sushi earlier, and I know you would have had the sushi in any other circumstance. Her sudden question caught you off guard, and you instinctively placed a hand on your lower belly, giving yourself away in an instant. You are, aren't you? She gasped. Shh, you hushed her. I'm 10 weeks. We're waiting until I'm 12 weeks before I announce. She did a sucked-in, high-pitched scream and bounced up and down a few times before running over and hugging you gently. You chuckled and gave her a hug back as she squealed excitedly in your ear. I'm so excited! Congratulations! How's Deku? Is he excited about being a dad? Oh, very, you chuckled. We're going to look at bassinets this afternoon. He's been talking non-stop about baby stuff. She grinned. You two are going to be the best parents. Thanks, you chuckled. I have no idea what I'm in for, but I'm on this ride, so I'm going to be as plus ultra as possible. That's the spirit, she giggled. If you ever need any help with anything, or need me to cover for you, just say the word. Her eyes sparkled brightly. I'll be sure to let you know, you replied with a smile. Later that day, you and Deku went to the baby store, looking at bassinets as planned, but it was starting to look like a much harder job than you anticipated. There are so many, you said with a slightly exasperated look on your face. This one rocks, vibrates, has the ability to record your heartbeat and play it back, has lights that imitate a car driving under streetlights, has a built-in monitor to check Bub's heart rate while they sleep, can be warmed up or cooled down, easily machine washable cover, safety rating of 500, and comes in 3 colours, Deku said in amazement, reading the information panel. Wow, you said in awe. How much is it? Deku looked at the price and then gave you a look. Oh, yeah, I should have guessed, you said with a sweat-dropped look. And, for a little more money, you can get a baby monitor with video, sound and infrared installed into the side of it. Infrared? What's infrared? What would we use the infrared for? You asked him. I don't know, he replied. You both stood there and stared at each other for a bit until the assistant walked over with a sly grin on her face. Hello, Mr. and Mrs. Hero. Can I help you with anything? Oh, no, we're fine. We're just looking for a gift for my cousin's baby. You lied expertly. You had practiced that line before entering the shop, knowing that someone was going to come over and ask you what you were looking for and why. Oh, the assistant said, a little disappointed that she didn't have the exclusive of you being pregnant. Could you please explain some of these bassinets? They all sound so complicated, you said to her. Oh, of course, she replied, launching into her well-rehearsed speech on each item. After a good 45 minutes, you and Deku finally picked one out and put it on lay-by to pick up at a later date, then left together. That was a lot more intense than I thought it was going to be, you admitted to Deku. He smiled. But it's really fun. I didn't know bassinets and cots were so intricate. I have a lot to learn. You chuckled and gave him a hug in the taxi as you were driven home. That's very much like you, Izu. Always plus ultra. It was the following week that you had your 11-week scan to make sure everything was going well with Bub, and you opted to have the gender reveal in the blood test, but you and Deku didn't want to find out just then. You'd have it revealed to you on the day of the baby shower. Bub was well and healthy, and you were low risk for all the genetic conditions they tested for, so you and Deku left the office with big smiles on your faces, and a little gender reveal envelope in your hand. I'm so excited to find out what we're having, you said excitedly. I can't believe I have the card right here in my hand. You looked down at the little envelope and held it with both hands. We should talk about names, Deku said with a smile. Do you have any names you like? Well, I like a few. I've been keeping my ears open for any names beginning with K because you said you like that a name starting with that letter. Deku blushed and grabbed for his fringe and tugged on it nervously. Oh, you don't need to think of K names just for me. No, I really like the name starting with K, you replied with a smile. Like Kunoma for a boy, or Kiruha for a girl. Oh, I really like Kiruha, but maybe just Kiru, Deku said with a soft smile. That sounds like a lovely girl's name. And do you like Kunoma for a boy's name? You asked. He pondered a little. Yes, it's nice, he said pleasantly. What if we put a ha on the end of the name instead of a ma? So, Kunoha. That's different, I like it, you replied happily, placing a hand on your still not very pregnant looking belly. It's unique. Deku smiled and you continued on home together. As the next week approached, you and Deku prepared to tell his mum and your parents the good news of you being pregnant before they found out on the news, and you got together the gifts for them as Deku got dressed to go. First was his mum, and she was so excited that you were both coming over for dinner. She didn't get to see her boy much, so this was a rare treat. Come in, she called brightly as Deku announced that you had arrived. She came out from the kitchen, wiping her hands on her apron with a big smile on her face, greeting you both warmly. Please come in, she said again, ushering you both inside more. You chatted lightly as you walked down to the dining area, and she left you there briefly to bring the food out and put it on the table. After you had eaten, You all went to the lounge room to talk more, and that's when you handed her the small gift that you were hiding in your bag. "Oh, what's this?" she asked, reaching out to accept the gift. "Open it," you encouraged excitedly, little butterflies flitting around in your stomach as you watched her accept it. Mrs. Midoriya opened the box and lifted the coffee cup out, turning it around to read what it said. "Best grandma in the world," she read. It took her a moment to figure out why you had given her a best grandma mug when she didn't have any grandchildren. Then it hit her. "Are you?" she gasped, jumping up and placing a hand to her mouth as she gaped in awe. You nodded tearfully with a big grin on your face. "I am. I'm 3 months along now," you replied cheerfully, relieved that the reveal had gone to plan. She burst into happy tears and Deku was the first to get to her, hugging her with tears streaming down his own face. At that point, you thought it best to give them time, and you paused to let them have their moment together. It was such a precious bond they shared, and you took a mental picture to save in the memory bank while they cried happily together. "Come here, Yin," Mrs. Midoriya said, finally letting go of her son with one arm so she could open it to bring you into the embrace, and there you all hugged for a little, revelling in the beautiful news. You all talked for a little more about the future, names for the baby, things you'd need for the little one, and future babysitting needs. Then, once you'd all talked enough, you and Deku left to go home. "I'm so glad that went well," you said with a happy sigh, holding his hand tightly in yours as you walked. The next afternoon you told your parents, and the day after the news reporters found out that you were expecting. You and Deku had announced your pregnancy that morning, and it had taken all of 3 seconds for the news to spread. By 11 a.m. your office phone was ringing off the hook, and you couldn't leave the building without being mobbed. "This is crazy," you panted to Deku as you sought refuge in his office. He looked up as you closed the door behind you and leaned up against it, spreading your hands out against the wood so you could barricade it from the people entering. "How come people are going crazy out there?" Deku smiled apologetically and stood up to come around and give you a hug. "I'm sorry, Yin," he apologized. "This is going to be the life of our little one." "It's okay, it's not your fault," you replied, hugging him back. You looked up into his cute freckled face, and he looked down into your eyes, a fondness shining in them. He leaned down to give you a kiss as you leaned up, and you both shared a quiet moment together kissing in his office. Unfortunately, it wasn't for long as the receptionist came looking for you to tell you that Heroes Daily wanted an interview with you and Deku. "I tried calling your office because they said they couldn't get through, and when I couldn't get through either, I came looking for you," she said with a sheepish chuckle. "Maybe I should have left it a bit longer?" "I was just catching a break," he replied a little sadly. "I've had call after call after call." "And that's going to happen a lot," the receptionist said sympathetically. "Best get used to it." You knew she was just speaking the truth, but it kind of annoyed you the way that she had said it, and a small vein popped on your forehead. She said one more thing before leaving, and you pursed your lips at the closed door. "Don't worry about organising the interview today. We can do it tomorrow," Deku said softly, seeing the annoyed look on your face and thinking it was about the Heroes Daily being so persistent. You huffed. "I think I'm going to go home. I just need to be away from people for a while." "Even me?" he asked softly with a worried look on his face. "No, not you, just everyone else that's been annoying me today," you replied with a grumpy look on your face. "Oh, okay," Deku said, not quite understanding why you had suddenly become mad. "I'm going to go and sneak out the back, okay? I'll see you at home." And with that you left to be away from the others. Amazingly, you got home without anyone seeing you or approaching you. Maybe it was because you had a scarf wrapped up around your head and had put the sunglasses on with airs that screamed, "Don't even look in my direction." And once you got home, you dug through your drawer to put on some comfy pants. While reefing through the bottom drawer, you found your old Deku montage pants. They were the pants that you used to wear all the time when you and Deku had started dating, and you smiled when you remembered the first time he'd seen you in them. He was equal parts surprised and flustered that you would wear his merch, but he never told you not to wear them. You grinned and got out of your work clothes and put the pants on, but they were very tight over your backside, and the front band dug into your stomach. With horror, you looked over into the mirror and saw your side profile. Oh, I look terrible. I've put on so much weight since meeting Izuku. Oh no. You looked down and back up into the mirror again, your face changing with despair. Just then you heard the front door open and froze. "Baby," Deku called out as he entered. At hearing his voice, you burst into tears. "Baby," he called again when he heard you sobbing from the bedroom. He was in a flash, his arms gently wrapping around your half-dressed form. "What's wrong?" "I'm fat," you wailed. "You're pregnant," he replied. "I love all of you. You're most beautiful to me right now because you're carrying our baby." You just sobbed into him, a little overwhelmed by everything that had happened that day, including your hormones going crazy. He held you, and then you moved to the bed so that he could give you a cuddle. It was while you were lying down that you told him about all the things that had set you off that day, and he was most sympathetic, agreeing with everything that had happened to you, and telling you that he didn't blame you for feeling overwhelmed. "We don't have to do the interview if you don't want to," he said softly. "I care about your mental health, and right now you need to focus on yourself and the little one." "Thank you so much," you sobbed, cuddling into him again. "I'm so lucky to have you." "No, I'm the lucky one," he said softly, kissing the top of your head. "Let's go out for dinner," Deku said suddenly. "I want to treat you." "I don't fit any clothes and I don't feel pretty," you pouted. "I think you look beautiful," he said, pulling back so he could look down at you, still buried in his arms. "And look," you said, looking up at him with red puffy eyes. "I can't go out looking like this. How embarrassing." Deku gave you a loving smile and leaned down, kissing each of your closed eyelids in turn. "I just want to treat you," he said softly, the earnestness in his voice making you melt. "Okay," you sung with resignation. "Where are we going to go for dinner?" "Wherever you'd like to go," he said with a smile. "I don't really know where I feel like going," you said with another little pout, getting out from under his arms to go and find something to put on. "How about we go to that nice restaurant in town?" Deku asked. "Okay," you replied with a shrug. "I don't really mind. I'm not that hungry, to be honest." But not even 10 minutes later you were starving and well and truly ready to go to that restaurant. "Come on, babe, come on," you called to Deku, who was still getting ready. I'm coming," he called from the bedroom. You scowled and sighed, mumbling to yourself, "Man, I just want to eat." Wanting to show that you were really wanting to get going to the restaurant, you decided to stand out the front of the house. That way Deku would hear the door open and would hurry up that little bit more. Happy with that decision, you pulled the door open and called back to Deku. "I'll be outside," you called loudly. "Okay, I'm coming," he called back. You stepped out and closed the door behind you, standing there looking out down the road. As you stood there, you felt like someone was nearby and looked around, just in time to see a photographer run away. Wait, were they here to take pictures? Did they take a picture of me? Was I smiling? No, I definitely wasn't smiling. Your face fell, even more than it was already, and at that point Deku arrived. "There was a guy here," you said to him as he stepped out. "I'm pretty sure he was Paparazzi." "Did he say anything to you?" Deku asked, looking off down the road where you'd pointed to. "No," you replied. "Okay," Deku said, wondering what he should do. "Don't worry about it, let's get going. I'm starving," you said, taking Deku's hand and leading him off down the road. You both had a really nice night together, and came home later than expected, then spent some time between the sheets, touching and giving each other some much-needed love before falling asleep. The next morning, you were up, making Deku and yourself a hot chocolate, when the TV clicked on at its usual 7:30 a.m. time, to the morning show. To your horror, they were running a breaking news report on you and Deku. "Trouble in paradise?" the reporter asked the viewers of the TV. "Mrs. Midoriya and our favourite hero Deku might be on the verge of a breakup. Reports say that she was seen yelling at her husband before slamming the door and storming off. Pictures of you yelling into the open door of the house last night before you and Deku went out for dinner showed up on the TV. You looked awful. It was clear that you had been crying, and you groaned as they zoomed in on your face. "She looks like she's been crying," one of the women on the panel said. "Is it all too much for her? Has she finally cracked?" "I don't blame her," another said, "especially after all the comments from the wedding." "Comments? What comments?" you thought, a dark look crossing your face. As you stood there getting more and more invested in their gossip about you, Deku wandered out, rubbing his eyes sleepily. Your attention on the TV shifted, and you looked at him as he looked from you to the TV. "Don't watch this," he said suddenly, scrambling to get the remote. "It's all bad. They all lie, all the time, and they never say anything nice." They had a picture of me when I was calling out to you yesterday, and they claimed we're on the rocks, you said with a sigh. We both know that's not true, he said with an annoyed sigh at what the TV people had been saying. Please promise me you won't watch the TV. People spread rumours all the time, and all it does is make you needlessly upset. Well, of course I'm going to be upset when they're lying blatantly like that, you huffed. But whatever, I don't care. You turned back to the bench and continued making breakfast for the two of you. You said you didn't care, but you did, and it was eating you alive that they were all out there lying about you and Deku, and there wasn't anything you could do about it. What gives them the right to say stuff like that when they don't even know the truth? You scowled to yourself. Later that morning, you and Deku entered the office together, and you noticed people looking at you strangely, then whispering among themselves. Deku paid them no heed. You gave him a little kiss goodbye as he entered his office, and then you entered yours. As usual, there were already a million messages on your answering machine, and you sighed heavily as you sat down and started listening to them all while taking notes. It was Heroes Daily again, pushing for an interview, and by the 7th recorded message you were getting pretty over them. In a hormonally charged fit, boosted by your annoyance at the news this morning, you rang the chief editor back. Hello? This is Mrs. Midoriya, you said curtly into the phone. Oh, yes, Mrs. Midoriya. Thank you for returning my call. Yes, you've been ringing incessantly since yesterday, you said in a stern voice. Yes, well, we would love an exclusive No! If you're going to be that persistent, constantly calling when one message is more than enough, then no, you're not getting any exclusive. None of you lying magazines and shows are getting anything from us. Why should we take time out of our busy schedules to give you information that you can misconstrue and use to make us look bad? Answer me that. The poor editor wasn't ready for a fight, and your stern words caught him off guard. I assure you we aren't going to misconstrue your words, Mrs. Midoriya. We only want to... No, that's all you do. Lie and spread rumours that hurt people, you said, your voice starting to crack with emotion. I'm sorry, but this conversation's over. Don't call again. And with that you hung up, shaking and angry. It was only 10:30 a.m. and you were already done for the day, fed up with people, so you packed your things and went home without telling Deku, and flopped down on your side on the bed as soon as you got there. It was only a second before you were fast asleep, and later, you weren't sure how long, you woke to Deku calling urgently for you. Here, you called out groggily, raising your head from the bed as he raced in, worried about you. What happened? Why didn't you tell me you were coming home? He asked, checking you over for any signs of injury. I don't care anymore. Everyone just lies and runs their mouth. I'm done with it, you mumbled in a depressed voice as you let your head drop back to the bed. Deku's brows furrowed with worry. It was all starting to get to you. We need to go on another holiday, he said softly, laying down behind you and wrapping his arm gently around your tummy. You still weren't showing yet, but he knew that's where his little one was growing quietly away. I don't want to go to work, you said sadly. I don't want to talk to anyone or see anyone. He nodded and kissed your shoulder, snuggling with you for a little bit before getting off the bed. I'll ring in and tell them you're not coming in for a bit, Deku said. You're the most important person to me, and I want you to be well and happy. Thank you, he said in a soft voice, snuggling back down to the covers and drifting back off to sleep again. As the baby grew, your body took a hit, energy-wise, and every chance you got to sleep, you would. So for the next week or so, you just stayed at home and slept and ate, while Deku went about his usual work. Because you weren't taking any interview bookings or other bookings, the magazine started to really speculate that there was growing tension between you and your husband, seeing as the news had gotten out about how you'd snapped at the editor that day, before everything went quiet. You were none the wiser to all of this chit-chat, as you'd promised Deku that you wouldn't listen to any of those types of programs, so you were in your own little happy bubble, while the rest of the city chatted and gossiped about you and Deku. Deku had heard the talk, and knew it wasn't true, so never bothered to clear it up, but everything hit the fan when you went back to work that following week. Feeling much better as you neared the 4-month mark, you had the smallest little baby bump, and although you couldn't see it clearly under the clothes, you found yourself constantly touching it to make sure it was still there. Your energy had come back, and you had a definite glow about you as you entered the building proudly that morning. People greeted you politely, but with a little reservation, and you tried not to think too much about it as you walked to your office, telling yourself that they just had lots to do and were so not into engaging in lengthy conversations. That morning, It was a little awkward, going back through the calls that you'd missed while you were on your leave. You had wondered how you'd be able to face anyone from any magazine again, since they'd all stopped calling now. You just assumed that they'd heard about what happened with the editor of Heroes Daily, and you were about to call him and apologise when Deku knocked on your door. "How are you this morning?" he asked tenderly, slipping into the office and closing the door behind him. "Better," you said with a smile. "Would you like to get a hot chocolate with me at morning tea?" he asked. "I don't have any plans." You giggled, feeling a little bit loved up. "Let's do it," you said with a smile, giving him a hug and a little kiss. He grinned and went back to his office, so you got back to work. Around 11 a.m. you got up, ready to go to the cafe on the corner with Deku, but he was in a heavy conversation on the phone, so you motioned to him that you'd start walking and you'd meet him there. He nodded, and you left, walking by yourself down to the corner cafe. As you entered, you saw the headlines of the latest newspaper as they sat in a row against the back shelf. "Is this the end of the hero couple?" it read. "Full story on page 4. Your curiosity piqued, wondering if it was about you, so you sidled over to it and pulled out the newspaper to have a look. Flicking to page 4, it was all laid out before you. Everyone thought that you and Deku were going to break up, with irrefutable evidence that you had cracked it. In one of the pictures they had taken of you, they had photoshopped a rehabilitation centre in the background that you had supposedly just left after spending a week there. "They just don't give up, do they?" you thought angrily. "I was going to apologise for talking to the editor like that, but what's the point? They don't deserve an apology." Further down the page it talked about how you had lashed out at the editor when all he was doing was calling for an interview because he was excited about the pregnancy announcement. "She was quite wound up and rude," he stated in the article. "Me? Rude to him? I was straightforward, but I wasn't rude, especially after he had rung how many times?" Feeling your blood boiling, you slammed the newspaper down on the table and turned and stormed out, when Deku turned up, bumping into him in the doorway. "Yin?" he asked in surprise, as you tried to push past him. "What's wrong?" "I'm going home," you snapped. "I can't stand it anymore." He turned and watched you go before chasing after you down the road. You were so angry that you didn't speak until you got home, and then you just exploded. "How dare they say stuff like that?" you raged, pregnancy hormones taking the reins on this one. "Insensitive, rude, stupid people." "Wait, I don't know what's going on. Did someone say something to you?" Deku asked worriedly. "The newspapers, they..." "Yin, but baby, I told you not to look at the newspapers." "Why do they always lie?" you yelled angrily. "That's just unfortunately what they do," Deku said sadly. "That's not fair though. Someone needs to tell them off," he replied angrily. "That's why I rang the editor back, annoyed with him because of how many times he rang and left messages. They think they can just do whatever they like with no regards for anyone else." "You rang the editor?" Deku asked with surprise. "When?" "Before," you said flippantly. "The day after we saw the stupid news saying that you and I were on the rocks." "Oh," Deku said with a concerned look on his face. "Oh, so that's where the comment in the article came from." "Yes, but I wasn't rude. How come they get to do whatever and say whatever, but if I try and defend myself, then I'm the person who's nasty and supposedly been to rehab and has cracked and..." "Did you read the article?" Deku asked. "I told you not to. It's all useless lies and rumours. It's best if you..." "But I hate that no one's doing anything about these reports," you yelled, angry tears streaming down your cheeks. Deku knew you were right, and he hated seeing you like this. But what would be the best thing to do at this point? Should he address the rumours and risk more popping up? Should you make an announcement and risk being slandered once again? Should he just let this all blow over? His face fell and he sighed heavily, reaching out to give you a hug. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry," he said sadly. I don't know what to do. What should I do?" "Tell them all to stop making up stories and lying," you wobbled through bitter tears. "Why can't they just leave us alone?" Deku hugged you tighter and nodded. "I'll fix everything. I'll make it all better," he said, pulling you back and giving you a determined look. "Tomorrow I'll start." You sniffed and nodded, wiping the tears from your eyes. "I'm sorry. I'm so emotional. Everything just gets to me. I'm pretty sure it's just the pregnancy hormones, but I'm still annoyed at the stupid papers." Deku nodded. "I'm sure if I explain everything, then they should understand." "I don't think so," you sighed, "but I just want these rumours cleared up." I'll do the best I can, Deku promised. True to his word, Deku set about calling papers and organising his own interviews so that he could clear up this mess. He even rang the chief editor of Heroes Daily and apologised on your behalf and set up an interview time so that they could have the exclusive for details regarding your pregnancy and plans for the future. My wife has been under a lot of unnecessary scrutiny, Deku said as he spoke to the editor. With her being pregnant as well as everything else going on, it all just got to her, so I'm sure you can imagine if every day of your life is misrepresented. Understandable, the editor replied. I will talk to her myself when you come in for the interview, but please let her know that for now there are no hard feelings. It's quite all right. Thank you, Deku replied, standing to bow while still on the phone. After making the necessary calls, he walked to your office to let you know that everything was in place to start clearing up these rumours, starting with a press conference that afternoon. You're welcome to come and stand with me on the podium, but I understand if you prefer not to, he said kindly. I'll stand, you said bravely. I'll be with you up there. Okay, he said with a relieved smile. And then tomorrow we have an exclusive with Heroes Daily. You grimaced. I did speak with the editor and explain the situation, he said quickly to quell your concerns. Okay, you said softly. He said that he would talk to you tomorrow, but he wanted me to pass on the message that there are no hard feelings, he said. Okay, well, that's good, but I'm still not happy with his persistence, you said with a light scowl. Yes, I know, Deku said, but I'm sure we'll be able to work something out. That afternoon you got ready to face the masses at the press conference and stood beside Deku nervously as you waited to go on stage at the local hall. Reporters from every gossip magazine and newspaper were there, waiting to get some juicy snippets of information from Deku or yourself that they could make something big and messy out of, like taking comments out of context. And finally, at the cue from the floor manager, you and Deku walked onto stage to polite clapping. You smiled pleasantly, even though you wanted to scowl at all of them, and Deku held up a hand to wave before leaning into the microphone. Thank you all for coming, he said politely. It's not often that I address rumours about myself or my wife, but seeing as these ones have been particularly hurtful, I've decided to set the record straight. Cameras flashed and reporters held their little microphones out to catch everything Deku was saying, so he continued. First and foremost, my wife and I are very much in love. He looked across at you and gave you a tender smile. So the rumours that we're on the rocks is very false, and I do not appreciate such things being said about us. The way he said it made your heart flutter with love and pride, and you stepped up a little closer to him. As for the photoshopped images of my wife supposedly coming out of respite, those are most definitely false, and if any photoshopping like that happens again, I will press charges for character defamation. There was a mumbling through the crowd, and Deku gave them all a stern look. My wife and I are expecting a baby. We're excited, as you can imagine. We just want to enjoy this time together, preparing for the arrival of our little one, but it really puts a damper on things when there are hurtful rumours flying around. You nodded in agreement, and as Deku paused, you stepped in, so he allowed you to stand at the mic and say your piece. I've always gone about my life quietly, as best I can. I do my work for the day, and then I come home with my husband, and we have dinner together and plan for the future. Never have I done anything deserving of such unkind words. If in future you have a problem with me, come and talk to me and we will sort it out like decent human beings. You looked out at the crowd, giving them a nod before stepping back and handing over to Deku. The reporters exploded with questions as you fell silent. Mrs. Midoriya, are you an advocate for women's rights? How long have you been feeling depressed for? Are you having a boy or a girl? Are you taking over the agency? Most of these questions that they asked were unrelated to anything, so you just ignored them and smiled instead, taking Deku's hand in yours, then placing your other hand on your little belly. Deku thanked them all for coming, then the two of you left the stage to the yells and cries from the reporters, begging for answers to their questions. Well, you said to your man as you walked out the back, I don't know if that fixed anything, but it was just nice to be able to say my part and be heard. Deku smiled down at you and squeezed your hand, that was still in his. And we have the interview with Heroes Daily, so we'll be able to talk more freely at that appointment as well, he said. It was interview time before you knew it, and you and Deku arrived at the building to get your hair and makeup done before going on set. Mrs. Midoriya, a word, if I may, the chief editor, that you had had a falling out with, asked politely upon your arrival. You nodded and followed him away, while Deku was taken to the hair and makeup section. please, allow me to apologise, the editor said, bowing his head. No, please, you said softly. I need to explain myself. He nodded, so you continued. That morning, I had unfortunately heard some unkind things said about Deku and myself on the TV, and so was in a not-so-pleasant mood to begin with, and then the copious amounts of missed calls and messages from you just tipped me over the edge. I'm sorry. No, please, I understand where you're coming from, the editor said. I don't like having to call and leave so many messages, but my head is on the chopping block if I don't get a call back. It's an unfortunate part of the job, but thanks to you and Hero Deku agreeing to the exclusive, my ass has been saved. You smiled sympathetically. I'm sorry they have you doing things that make you uncomfortable. He sighed. Unfortunately, but I do love my job. I guess I can't have everything, good pay, good work and good conditions, and no stress. You chuckled. I get it. You and he shared a happy smile together, and he gestured towards where Deku had been taken for hair and makeup. Come on, I'll take you in to get ready, he said kindly. Thank you, I appreciate you pulling me aside to have a talk, you said as you walked beside him. I'll understand where you're coming from now on when you call. And I'll be mindful to not leave 10 messages, he said with a small chuckle. I'll just reply the one message, you said with a grin, as the two of you entered the room. Deku looked up and saw you smiling with the editor and relaxed. Not that he hadn't been relaxed before, but seeing you smiling made his heart happy. Everything okay? He whispered to you as you sat down in the seat beside him. Yes, you said with a smile. Everything's okay now. I'm glad, he said with a grin. The two of you got yourselves fixed up, and then you were called onto the set where the interview would take place. My favourite hero couple, the interviewer greeted you. You smiled and he stepped forward to greet you both. Now, let's have a chat about your baby. I'm so excited for this hero baby. It's going to be the cutest little bundle around, he said excitedly. You placed a hand on your little belly and smiled happily. I sure hope it's going to be cute. I'm sure it will be, with Izuku as its daddy. You smiled up at your man as he chatted to the interviewer, and then you reached for his hand and held it lovingly in yours. You were led on stage and the interview began, with the man conducting the show asking many questions. It was quite a nice interview really, and all of your previous annoyances melted away as you got excited about the arrival of your little one with Deku, sharing many looks between the two of you, and ending with your curly-haired heartthrob leaning across and rubbing his nose to yours. You were so loved up and on a high as you left the building with Deku later that day. That was so nice. I'm glad we did that interview, you said to him. He smiled in return. I'm really happy that everything worked out. Thank you for pushing me to make a stand. If it weren't for you, I'd have left it, but I think we did the right thing. You agreed. The next morning the TV clicked on as usual, and you went to change the channels when the lady on the TV said something that caught your attention. And they looked so in love, she gushed. I'm sorry I ever doubted them. You paused when you saw the picture of you and Deku on screen, smiling at each other, a screenshot from the interview with Heroes Daily yesterday. After listening for a while, it appeared that your and Deku's speeches from 2 days ago and the interview yesterday had made a real impact on society, and a lot of other heroes were stepping forward with false stories and hurtful rumours that had been said about them too, and making statements to clear them. You made your hot chocolate and sat down to listen, eyes brimming with happy tears, when so many people came forward and praised your bravery at standing up against the injustice. She's so strong, one lady on the panel said. She has my whole respect. She is a hard-working woman who stands by her man, and on top of all the BS that's been said about her, she's pregnant. I'd like to see the people out there who've been slandering her walk a mile in her shoes. The others on the panel agreed. Oh, and the interview yesterday has gone viral on the internet, with world-renowned body language experts observing the body language between her and Deku, and they've said all, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that the pair are deeply in love. I was a fan of theirs before, one woman on the end of the table said, but after seeing how they conducted themselves in the face of all these rumours, they have my ultimate respect. Just then Deku walked out and saw the TV on with you watching it, and was about to say turn it off, but then he heard what was being said, and he stopped. You felt his presence there, and looked at him with a big grin. We did the right thing, you said happily, a tear slipping down your cheek. People are understanding us now. We've sparked a movement against baseless rumours. Deku was just more happy about you being content, and he walked over to give you a hug. It all ended well, he said, kissing you on the top of the head. The next month or so wasn't very eventful, and you were happy about that. The less that was happening, the happier you were. You did, however, suddenly become the ambassador for hero protection, the spokeswoman for those who had had a hard time with false rumours, and you helped other people who had been thrown into the same situation as you, where the media had taken a bad photo and had made up a nasty story about that person. And you gathered a multitude of fans, and you and Deku were fast becoming known as a power couple. In addition to all the newfound love your fans were showering you with, you were being gifted baby items left, right and centre, and as a token of friendship to the chief editor, you gave Heroes Daily the rights to a private maternity shoot with you and Deku, which he was most grateful to you for, as it made him look very good. "Would you like to have the shoot here in our studio?" he offered. "You can use anything you want for props. Oh, and you're welcome to use our hair and makeup team here as well." "Well, thank you," you said, phone to ear as you looked up out your office door just as Deku entered. "That's very kind." You exchanged other pleasantries, then said your goodbyes and turned your attention to Deku. "I've just booked our maternity shoot with Heroes Daily," you said to your husband. "I know it's another 3 months away, but I'm getting in early." He grinned. "That's great. I'm here to remind you that we have the 20-week scan this afternoon, after work too." "Oh, yes, thank you. I'm looking forward to seeing our little one again. I haven't felt anything yet." "Maybe they're just a sleepy little baby," Deku commented, walking over and placing his hand on your lower abdomen that was poking out just a little bit more now. "Maybe. That would be good if they were. That way I wouldn't have too many sleepless nights when they're born." Deku smiled and gave you a hug. "I'll be there to help," he promised. "I'll get up with you and help feed the baby if I can." "Thank you. You're going to be an amazing daddy," you said with a loving smile. Deku grinned again, his freckled cheeks scrunching as the smile lit up his face. That afternoon you went for the 20-week scan. Everything was tracking perfectly, and you were surprised to see just how much your little one was wiggling around in there. "Wow, Bub moves so much," you said in awe as you watched the wriggly little bean do somersaults in your belly. The doctor agreed and started chatting with Deku, which gave you an opportunity to watch your baby move on screen and try and see if you could feel when they moved. In one of their movements, they kicked a tiny foot out and bopped the inside of your tummy, and your eyes flew open. "I felt the baby kick," you whispered in awe, your comment going unnoticed by the two men. You watched the screen again and could feel a funny sensation whenever Bub rolled, and you smiled to yourself. "I've been feeling you all along. I just thought you were my tummy rumbling or something," you thought, "but it's been you rolling around in there." Bub was very wriggly and squirmed around the whole time that the doctor was trying to get images, which proved to be a little more difficult than he realised, but eventually he measured everything and gave you a clean bill of health for the baby. "Now, I'll see you at the 28-week mark, and that will be it," he said as he pulled the probe from your stomach and handed you some tissues to wipe the ultrasound gel off. "After 28 weeks, it just gets harder and harder to get good images of Bub, because they grow so quickly. But your little one is perfectly healthy, so I have no reason to want to monitor your pregnancy." "Thank you, that's the nicest thing anyone could have ever said to me," you said with a chuckle. "I'm glad everything's well." On a high, you and Deku left to go home, chatting again about baby things and such. As the weeks ticked by, your belly grew, and by the 7th month mark, you were definitely sporting a beautiful baby bump, and you wanted to show it off to the world by wearing the most form-fitting outfits you could. "I really like you like this," Deku said bashfully one morning as he watched you waddle around in a tight-fitting outfit, his little creation on display. "I feel so well and happy," you said with a smile as you got up on tippy toes and kissed his lips. He gave you a bashful smile and watched you go, a desire to own you again building in his core. "Why am I feeling this way?" he thought as he watched you parade along with your belly out front. "I really just want to make love to her again. Soon. She looks so good like this." At work, you were getting compliments and praises left, right and centre, and you let a few of the women touch your pregnant belly, a few asking if your little one was very active. "Oh gosh, yes," you exclaimed. "Bean just wriggles around in there day and night, especially first thing in the morning." "Do you know the gender yet?" another asked. "No, not yet. I have the envelope at home with the gender of Bub in there, but it won't be revealed to us until the baby shower," you replied, rubbing your belly. "When is the baby shower?" a third asked. Around week 35. I'm a little over 28 weeks now, so not long to go. Then we'll know whether we're going to have a little boy or a little girl." "Do you want a boy or girl?" the first asked excitedly. "I don't really mind," you replied with a smile, "but I think Deku would love a little girl." "I think you're having a boy," the second said, standing back to check baby bump out. Just another warning before we start, this chapter does have an adult scene which I have cut out as I usually do. I will put the links in the description for this chapter. It's quite a large adult scene that I've cut out, but it will just continue on as if it never happened in this listener audio version. "Oh, really?" you asked, looking down at your belly. "What makes you say that?" "You're sitting very low. Boys always sit low." "Isn't that a sign for girls?" another lady asked, checking out your belly. "Does the baby move a lot?" she then asked you. "Yes, all the time." "Move as in roll or kick?" the first asked. Well, roll mostly," you replied, thinking a little. "Girl," the first said with a click of her fingers. "Definitely girl." "I think girl too," another commented. You smiled and chuckled. Everyone was saying something different. "Guess I'll just have to wait and find out when the reveal happens," you thought, as you let them all continue to try and figure out what gender you were having. After they chatted a little more, you moved on to your office and went about your day, feeling the little one wriggling around in there. With such a beautiful little bump to the inside of your tummy every now and again, there was no way you could feel lonely. A few more weeks went by, and you were just a week away from the baby shower and starting to feel a little heavier. "Your mum is okay with planning?" you asked Deku one night. Mrs. Midoriya had offered to host the baby shower at her place and wanted to cater and set everything up by herself so that you didn't have to do a thing, which you were mostly grateful for, as it was hard enough getting out of bed most mornings, let alone trying to plan your own baby shower. "She will be enjoying it. The planning, that is. I promise," Deku said happily to you, his hands tracing over the sides of your belly. He felt a little nudge against his palm and he smiled up big. "I just felt a little kick," he said excitedly. "I love you too," he spoke to your stomach. That desire to own you was starting to eat away at him. It had been weeks since the two of you had been intimate, and he didn't want to push you or anything, so he had just been waiting patiently for you to indicate that you wanted to do something more than just kiss, but you'd been so busy or tired that you hadn't initiated anything, and he was starting to lose the fight against his higher morals. His hand gently caressed under your belly, and he started to get more excited as his fingers brushed across your pelvic bone. He remembered all the times that you two had been intimate, and image after image of you on top of him flashed through his mind. You could feel the mood shift, and you started to get a little excited as well as Deku's hand slipped a little lower. "It's been a while since we were intimate," you thought, looking up into his eyes. He paused and looked at you, then quickly pulled his hand away and turned away from you, a flustered look on his face. "Are you okay, Izu?" you asked, placing a hand on his arm. He nodded, but didn't say yes, so you squeezed his arm gently to get him to look at you again. "What's up?" you asked him, gazing into his eyes as they started to flicker a little with a hint of passion. I forgive me," he fumbled, a bright blush across his cheeks as he tried to hide. "Why? What did you do?" you asked, confused. His blush deepened, and you leaned into him sideways so that your bump wouldn't get in the way as you tried to see his eyes from under his forearm that he had held up. "Yes? I was just thinking about us, and I know I shouldn't be having these thoughts when you're so heavily pregnant, but I..." As he fumbled along, you understood what he was trying to say and smiled softly. "You want to have some time together?" you asked seductively, nudging him a little, which made him sweat bullets of embarrassment. "I'm sorry, I can't stop thinking about you and my mind keeps on..." "Why are you being so shy?" you chuckled, struggling to stand up and then turning and taking his arm in your hand and pulling it from his face. "No, don't look at me, I'm so embarrassed," he mumbled, looking away. "Come with me," you said with a cheeky smirk. "It's been a while since we did anything." You pulled him up from the lounge chair, and with pregnant belly in front, you led him down to the bedroom. His heart was pounding in his chest, and there was something else pounding somewhere else. And after that, the two of you were so relaxed you fell asleep almost instantly. "Can you please zip up the back of the dress for me?" you asked Deku the following week as you were getting ready for the baby shower. You look beautiful, he said with a bashful smile as he walked up behind you and zipped up the dress. I feel so big, you moaned pitifully, turning to face him and cupping your hands underneath your very large belly. His eyes softened and he gently cupped your hands in his as he helped you hold the weight of your belly. You are perfect, and this beautiful belly is perfect, because our little one is in there, he said, gently rubbing under your tummy and feeling a little wriggle in his palm. We get to find out if we're having a little girl or a little boy today, he said excitedly. Oh, that reminds me. Who's picking up the gender reveal balloon? Deku asked as he let go of your belly and stepped back to keep getting ready himself. Gem and Shoto, he said. Gem offered to pick the balloon up for me, so I wouldn't be tempted to try and figure out what the colour was inside. Deku grinned. They're wonderful people. Is Kachan and his wife coming today? I remember inviting them, but I don't remember if they replied. Yeah, they're coming. All of your high school friends are coming, and some of my work friends and others, you said with a smile. It's going to be a good day. I just hope your mum is going to be okay with such a full house of people. She'll be very happy, I'm sure, Deku replied with a beautiful smile. Mum loves to cater for people. You smiled and reached for your handbag. Well then, let's go. Better not keep everyone waiting. Deku nodded and reached out for your hand, before walking off down to the front door, then off to his mum's house for the baby shower. He was so excited. It would only be a few more weeks of your quiet little house of 2, then it would become a happy little house of 3. You could hear the chatter from the hallway of the building as you and Deku walked up the corridor to the front door of his apartment building, and you smiled, huffing slightly from the walk. Sounds like everyone's here, you panted with a smile. Are you okay, Yin? Do you need to sit? Deku asked with concern rising in his voice. I'm okay, you replied, still panting a little. I'll sit when we get inside. He nodded and linked his arm with yours to try and take some of your weight on his arm. You and he stopped at his mum's front door and knocked. It didn't take long for her to answer, and she nearly exploded with excitement when she saw you both. Come in, she greeted brightly. Please, oh Yin, you look so beautiful. Thank you, you panted, trying desperately to breathe normally so that it didn't sound or look like you were dying. Please, come and sit, she offered, ushering you and Deku in, once you'd taken your shoes off. You both walked down the hall and into the lounge room where everyone was milling around. Gem, Mrs. Todoroki, was the first to see you and smiled as she walked over to say hello. You look so beautiful, she said softly as she walked up and hugged you in greeting. I feel so heavy, you said, still huffing a little. It's terrible, isn't it? She replied sympathetically. Not long to go now, then you'll be free of all that weight soon enough. Do you feel any lighter immediately after giving birth? You asked her. Well, yes, in a way, but your legs and belly feel all wobbly because there's such a change to the structure of your body in a short space of time, she said. I'm inclined to believe you, you replied with a smile, looking down to see little Soshi clinging to her leg. Hi, Soshi, he greeted the little one while he stared up at you with his bright orange eyes. He looked from you to his mum, and she smiled down at him. Say hello, sweetheart, she encouraged him. Hello, he said softly to you. Attention, Todoroki called suddenly from beside Mrs. Midoriya, as she stood there shyly, unable to call everyone's attention over the noise of the chatter in the room. You should have gotten Bakugo to yell, Kaminari's voice called from where he was sitting on the lounge beside his fiancée Kairi. The pair had just recently announced their engagement and were head over heels in love. Damn right she should have, Bakugo growled from beside the drinks bar, sculling down a coke. He would have just shouted, Die, you extras, another voice quipped. Who said that? Damn extra, Bakugo snapped, earning a chuckle from the room while Mrs. Bakugo tried to calm him down. Todoroki cleared his throat, and everyone looked back to him and Mrs. Midoriya. Thank you all so much for coming today, she said happily. It's a wonderful day today, as we all are here to celebrate the soon arrival of the newest member of the Midoriya family. You grinned, feeling your little one kick as you placed a hand on your belly. Deku happily put his arm around you, and you grinned up at him. We have plenty of drinks and food, so please eat up. The bathroom's down the hall to your right, and if any of the little ones here today need a nap, you're welcome to let them sleep in any of the rooms, Mrs. Midoriya said with glee, looking over to the 3 little kids playing on the mat with the toys that she had bought in advance for her coming grandchild. Little Soshi had the train set, Chisuke had the All Might action figure and was trying to stop Soshi's train with it, and Ginny had found the coloured rings and was stacking them expertly onto the wooden pegs. The attention of the room lingered on the kids before looking back to Mrs. Midoriya. "So let's start," she said happily. "I'll go get the food." "I'll help, Mum," Deku said, leaving your side to help his mother in the kitchen. "Do you feel like you're having a boy or a girl?" Mrs. Bakugo asked as she walked over to greet you. "I'm not sure, and so many people have said either boy or girl, so I can't even say that people are swayed to one gender, because it's pretty equal," you said with a chuckle. "I hope you have a girl, because a house of boys is hard," she said with a smirk, grunting as her husband walked behind her and smacked her on the ass. "Behave!" she hissed at his smirking face as he walked over to his high school friends, Kirishima and Kaminari. "Kairi!" you called to the pretty blonde girl beside Kaminari. She looked up and smiled at you, then got up and walked over. "Hey, no, come back," Kaminari called when she got up and left his side. "No, I'll be back in a second. You can survive for a second without me," she called back. "No, I can't," he wailed pitifully. "I'm dying." "I can help with that," Bakugo sneered, crackling explosions in the palms of his hands. "Nope, I'm good. I just decided I'm fine," Kaminari said quickly. You shook your head and looked to Kairi, who was chuckling a little. "He's an idiot, but I love him," she said with a shy smile. "You two are so cute together," you said. "When's the wedding?" "Oh, another 5 months away," she said with a smile. "It comes around pretty quickly," Mrs. Bakugo said knowingly. "Much like 5 weeks is going to fly for you, Yin. Then before you know it, you're a mum and you have no idea what you're doing." "Was Chi a good baby?" you asked her. "Does he look like he's easy to handle?" she deadpanned, all of you looking over to where Bakugo was trying to stop Chi from destroying Soshi's train. You hummed. "Nah, he was actually pretty good as a baby. He's just gotten more and more intense as he's gotten older." "That's probably his dad coming through," Kairi said with a chuckle. "Yeah, 100%, she replied with a sigh. "Thankfully, Izu's pretty mellow, so our bub might be a little bit more chilled." "Probably," she replied to you. "It's good being a mum, though. You'll enjoy it." Just then entrees were being passed around, and the conversation paused so you could all eat the delicious food that Mrs. Midoriya had made. Deku walked over to you while you were eating and tenderly touched your shoulder to let you know that he was there, and you smiled over your shoulder at him. "I didn't get a chance to congratulate you properly on your wedding day," Kairi said when she saw you and Deku together. "It was such a busy day." "Yes, it was," you replied. "It was nice to get away after it all, to be honest. Have you got most of your stuff done for your wedding?" Kinda. Denki isn't really the organised type," she chuckled, looking over to her man, who had his eyes on her still and winked when she looked at him. You saw them share a moment and smiled to yourself. "Oh, they're so cute. I'm glad he's settling down." The afternoon continued on, and Soshi and Ginny were taken away for their afternoon naps, while Jisuke raged on until he passed out in his dad's arms. "I'll go for a walk with him in the carrier," Bakugo said to his wife. "Is it in the bag?" "Yeah," she replied, still stuffing her face with food. He walked over to the monster-sized bag and fished around in it with one hand till he found the fabric carrier and then pulled it out, and Mrs. Bakugo helped to tie it on him. "Enjoy your walk," she said, patting him on the back as he headed for the door. He grunted, heading off with his little boy fast asleep on his chest. You smiled as she walked back over towards you and sat down. "That's a huge bag," you said with a chuckle to her, pointing to her nappy bag. "Oh, yeah, I've literally got everything in there," she replied. "Oh gosh, I've run out of wipes and Soshi has just woken up with a soiled nappy," Jem said in a panicked whisper as she flustered her way over to you and Mrs. Bakugo. "In the bag, hun? Do you prefer Huggies or Home Brand? I've got both," Mrs. Bakugo said. "I'll take Huggies if that's okay. Soshi has sensitive skin," Jem replied. "And thank you so much, you're a lifesaver." "Anytime. I literally have everything in that bag, even snacks for me," she said with a devious smirk. "Wine?" you asked. "Yeah, babe. Bottom left pocket," she replied without missing a beat, and you let out a happy laugh, not expecting her to reply like that. After everyone had eaten and chatted, it came time for games. "This game is to try the baby food and figure out what the flavour is," Jem said. She was in charge of games. "I'm out," Kaminari said, standing up. "No, you're not," Kairi said quickly, grabbing his sleeve and yanking him back down beside her. "You're going to try them, and then you tell me what the flavour is." "Do I have to?" he moaned playfully, turning and ducking his face into the side of her neck and kissing her. She crunched her neck up and giggled, pushing him away. "Stop it," she chuckled. The small containers of food were passed around to everyone, and then a sheet of paper and a pen, so that the flavour could be written down. You tried the first one and wrinkled your nose up at the taste. "Ugh, what's this one?" you whispered. "Which one's that?" Mrs. Bakugo asked, leaning over to have a look in your cup. You showed her. "Oh yeah, that's zucchini, spinach and apple puree," she said calmly. "She hates that one." "I can understand why," he replied with a grimace. "I'm impressed that you recognised it just by the look, though." "Babe, when you've had it spat in your face, you get to know what the look and smell of it is like pretty quickly," she laughed. "You'll be all up over that soon." The games continued and then finished up, and you and Deku were called to the centre of the room, where you waited with nervous excitement as Jem passed you the gender reveal balloon. "Okay," she said with a smile. "Pop it when you're ready. If the confetti inside is pink, it's a girl, and if it's blue, it's a boy." You placed a hand on your belly and looked at Deku as you both held the string of the balloon together. "You pop it," you said to him, passing him the needle. "Are you sure?" he asked. "Yes," you said with a grin. "Okay. On the count of 3, he said with a smile, looking up and around the room at everyone who was waiting with cameras poised and big smiles on their faces. 3, 2, 1, bang! Pink confetti came jetting out of the freshly popped balloon, firing off a round of whoops and cries of delight from the onlookers. "A girl!" Deku gasped, immediately breaking down in tears. "I'm so excited!" "Oh wow!" you said with delight, hugging your crying husband, the two of you embracing while the others clapped happily. Each person then stepped forward to give you their congratulations, and Mrs. Midoriya came in to embrace you both, happy tears streaming from her eyes. "I'm so happy! I can't wait to meet our little granddaughter when she arrives!" she wailed with delight. It was shortly after then that you and Deku said your goodbyes to everyone. It had been 4 hours at the party, and you were feeling very tired. You hadn't done much, but you were tuckered out from just sitting. Deku arranged for the gifts from the attendants to be kept at his mum's house, and then he would pick them up at a later date. Then you headed home, ready for a little nap before dinner. It had been a lovely day, and you and Deku snuggled up together to talk about your little girl. "I still like the name Kiru," you said to Deku. "It's a very pretty name." "Same," he replied, running his hand gently over your belly and feeling the little kicks and wiggles from your little girl inside. "Not long now," you said with a little smile. "Only a few more weeks, and then we'll get to meet her." Deku smiled lovingly and kissed your lips. "I can't wait." The last few weeks felt like they slowed down. You couldn't wait to have your baby, and you checked your app every day to see what you could expect to feel for that day or week ahead. Almost as if on cue, you started to get a little bit of swelling in your lower legs and feet, just like the app said you might, and lower back pain was a real and terrifying thing. "Is the cot due to arrive today?" you asked Deku as you waddled down the hallway, one hand on your lower back, the other one under your belly as you swayed your way down to the kitchen. "Yes, this afternoon," Deku said, giving you a kiss on the forehead. "You're on maternity leave from tomorrow, right? That will be good for you. Your back is sore, isn't it?" "Yes, I'm surprised that I've lasted till 38 weeks, you said, reaching back to rub your aching back and stretching it out a little. "Go and sit, Yin. Is there anything I can get for you?" Deku asked kindly. "A glass of water would be really lovely," you said with a smile, turning and walking into the lounge and lying down on the lounge on your side. These days, just even sitting was tiring. Deku quickly got you a glass of water and brought it to you, setting it up on a little side table and placing it within reach so that you could have a drink whenever you liked. "Thanks, baby," he said with a smile, closing your eyes for a minute or two. In a second, you were out cold, and Deku smiled when he walked back in next and saw you fast asleep, snoring lightly. "Poor Yin," he thought, sympathetically as he watched you sleep for a bit. The doorbell chime broke him out of his little daydream, and he went to answer the door. It was the couriers with the baby cot. "Oh, please, come in," he said, gesturing widely for them to enter. "Where do you want it?" the head courier asked. "Bedroom, please," Deku said, stepping aside as they walked into the house. "We might need to go through that door, boss," the assistant said from the back, carrying the tail end of the cot packaging, sizing up that the long package might not fit down the hall and straight into the bedroom. It would need a little bit of angling. "Good thinking," the guy at the front replied, manoeuvring the parcel through the lounge door and into the lounge room where you were sleeping. He saw you and grinned when he saw your belly out front. Some have all the luck, he chuckled as he passed. My wife would sleep anywhere when she was pregnant, the other said as he walked past you as well. She was a sleeper, could sleep through anything. Deku followed them, throwing you a glance and smiling to himself when you didn't even so much as stir you were in that deep of a sleep. The men carried the package to the bedroom and put it in the corner of the room, then left, and Deku started making some food for dinner. It was when you smelled food cooking that you woke up and groggily looked around. Baby? You called out sleepily. Are you awake now, Yin? Would you like dinner? Deku asked from the kitchen. You tried to move, but your whole right side had gone dead, so you struggled to get up. Izu, I might need some help, he chuckled, struggling like a beached whale to get off the couch. He entered and looked at you. What's happened? My side is numb. I can't get up, you half chuckled, trying to reach down and feel for your leg. Okay, let me try, Deku said, reaching down and lifting you up in his arms, then gently placing your feet down on the ground. You buckled immediately and clung to him. Ow, you wailed. I can't feel my leg. Just hold on to me, Deku said, holding you steady. This sucks. I just want to not be pregnant anymore, you sighed. Everything is swollen, everything hurts, and I'm so tired. The cot turned up today, Deku said excitedly. It's in the bedroom. Oh? When did that arrive? This afternoon, while you were asleep, Deku said with a gentle chuckle. You slept right through it. They walked right past you and you didn't even notice. See? Tired, you laughed, the feeling slowly coming back to your legs. Okay, ouch, oh, it's prickly, but I should be okay. I'll hold you a while longer. I like holding you, Deku said softly, supporting most of your weight on his arms. In that gentle moment you kissed, your leg prickling like mad, but your lips feeling warm and alive being pressed to Deku's. At the end of the following week, Deku came home with a pensive look on his face. What happened? You asked as soon as you saw the look on his face. Oh, He looked away and tugged his fringe nervously. You can tell something's already up? Yes, you look worried, you said. I don't know what to do, Deku said. I've been asked to attend an important case overseas next week for a week, but I'm worried that you're going to labour and I won't be able to be there for you. I don't think I'll be going into labour any time soon, you said with a chuckle. Go, baby. You'll be fine. They need you, and I'd be selfish to say no and keep you all to myself when there's nothing happening here. I'm just baking away. Deku gave you a half-nervous smile and looked down at the ground. I'll be going with some of my ex-classmates, he said softly. Okay, you said, feeling a little suspicious now. I did tell you about how Uravity confessed to me in high school, yeah? He said nervously. You nodded, feeling a little bit more uneasy now. Well, I'm sure that she's moved on, but she will be there, he said softly. I just want you to know so that if the media make up stories... I trust you completely, Izu, you said with a gentle smile, but thank you for worrying about it and telling me. He nodded. You are the only one I have my eyes on, the only one I care about. I love you more than anything else in this world, and I'm determined to make this world a safer place so that you and our daughter can live without fear of any evil. Conviction flashed in his eyes as he spoke, and your heart burst with love. Your man still was so innocent and simple, and you were beyond happy that you'd gotten someone so sweet. You go and work on the case, Izu, he said softly, hugging him lovingly. I trust you above all else, and I love you to the ends of the earth. Go and solve it, and come back and help me deliver this baby into the world. Relieved and spurred on by your speech, he took a deep breath in and straightened. Go beyond plus ultra, right? He raised his fist high, with that beautiful carefree grin on his freckled face. That's what you always say, he said with a smile. You go and do just that. At the end of that week, you stood on the doorstep and sadly waved Deku off. As the time had gotten closer for him to leave, he had expressed desires about not going, but you kept encouraging him, knowing he would have felt guilty had something happened on the mission and that he had decided not to go at the last minute. With a sad look on his face, he hopped into the back of the taxi and closed the door with a hand raised to the glass. You knew you were going to see him in a week, so why were you suddenly feeling so emotional? Not wanting to trigger Deku, you kept smiling and waving as the taxi pulled away from the curb and the minute it had gone around the corner, you let your guard down and tears fell quickly from your eyes. "It's fine. You'll be fine," you coached yourself, wiping your eyes as you slowly waddled back inside the house, your feet feeling very heavy and swollen, and your back feeling like it was going to get crushed by the weight of your baby pulling it out of alignment. Walking slowly to the kitchen, you got yourself a drink, then went to lie down, falling asleep immediately. It was around 9 p.m. when you woke and you checked your phone. Deku had texted, as you expected, and was keeping you updated with everything that was happening, and you quickly replied, apologizing for the late replies you'd fallen asleep. He responded immediately. "We're about to board the plane now. I'm between Kachan and Todoroki," he sent, and you smiled. He doesn't want me to worry about who he's sitting next to or anything. Content, you wished him a good flight, and then went to order dinner. The next few days were quiet, and a little lonely for you. This was the first time Deku had been away on a mission since you two got together, and you really did miss him. You would text each day, morning and night, and he would fill you in on what was happening so that you felt like you were up to date. "We have a press conference tomorrow, talking about the mission," Deku said. "They want a statement from us, so that it stops any other villains trying to do the same thing as what this group did, that we just took down." "Good luck, I hope it all goes well," you sent back. "How are you?" he then asked. "Is our little girl being good for Mummy?" You smiled as you sent back a reply. "Yes, she's being very good." "I'm glad," he sent in reply, and you could almost feel the warmth in his message. "We have to go now, so I'll text you before I go to bed." "Okay, love you," you sent. "I love you more, Yin. You're my one and only," he replied. You smiled as you put the phone down. The next morning you got up and put the TV on like you usually did. Having slept in a little more than usual, you had missed the morning report, but the news seemed to be buzzing and you caught a special update report that happened to be on as you switched the TV on. On screen was a picture of Deku, holding Uraraka's hand in his, and they were both smiling at each other. "Is our favourite hero cheating?" the newscaster asked. Your heart sank. The image of them being so happy together, combined with how beautifully slim and unpregnant Uraraka looked, made you lose your appetite, and you put your breakfast down on the table. "At a press conference last night, these two were seen getting very close and cosy," the news reporter said. "Eyewitnesses say that it was obvious that there were romantic feelings shared between the two." Bitter tears sprung into the corner of your eyes as you looked at the picture. You had been missing Deku more and more each day, and this was just salt being rubbed into the wound of loneliness. The news reporter kept talking about your man and Uraraka and how they spent the night together, and you realised that you had never received another message from Deku. Come to think of it, he hadn't texted you this morning either. You got up out of your chair and waddled down the hall to get your phone, unplugging it from the charger and turning the screen on. No messages. Hurt, you tried to think rationally and calmly. "Izuku wouldn't do that. He wouldn't cheat on me. We're going to have a baby soon. He loves me. It's just the media. They always lie. But why didn't he text me? Is he still with her now? No, don't think like that. He's just sleeping still. He might not have wanted to text me late in case I woke up, but..." You tortured yourself with wild thoughts for the next hour as you tried to contact Deku's phone, but to no avail. It was while you were trying to text him that you received a call from the chief editor from Heroes Daily, and you answered as happily as you could. "Hello?" "Yin," he greeted you. "You've seen the lies on TV by now, I assume?" You paused. "I hope they are," you said, emotions starting to show in your voice. "They are. I have all the other photos and video of what happened last night at the press conference, and don't worry, I'm publishing a story right now telling the truth about what happened, but I wanted to tell you first so that you wouldn't be worried." You sighed with relief. "Thank you," you said gratefully. "My hormones ran away with my thoughts for a bit there. What actually happened?" Uravati slipped as she was walking up on stage, and he grabbed her to stop her from falling over. This picture that's going around is shortly after he grabbed her arm. It looks like they're sharing a moment, but when you see the footage, it's a shot amongst millions. There's no moment between them, I can assure you that, and I'm going to post the full video so that people can see it. Tears of relief flooded down your face. "Thank you," you sniffed. "You're very welcome. I want to expose the media. That's very cruel what they've done, considering that you're due any day now," he said. Leave it with me. I won't let them label your lovely husband a cheater." "Thank you again," you sobbed happily. "Really?" "It's my pleasure. I really respect the two of you as a couple, so it's the least I can do." You wobbled, smiled into the phone and sniffed again. "Please rest, hun," he said softly. "It's all okay. Let me handle it." "Thank you so much again," you said again. "You're amazing." "Any time," he said brightly. "Actually, also, do you know what happened afterwards? Because I can't seem to get in contact with Izu. His phone is off or something." "Oh? Okay. Let me see if I can contact him or someone who can get him to call you. I'll be in touch." And with that, he hung up. You felt a little bit better after that, and went to turn the TV off, but suddenly a new report was taking over the news. It was the full video of Uraraka slipping and Deku grabbing her by the arm before she fell. The other heroes, alongside Deku, were both as concerned for her as he had been, and had reached out as well, but your man was far quicker, and that's why he had grabbed her first. Your heart eased. "I'm sorry I doubted him for a second there. I'm grateful that the editor rang me and has been doing his best to expose the media's lies." As you watched, more footage from the night unfolded that showed that Deku and Uravity had no romantic moments during the conference. For the most part, they were on opposite sides of the room, and you relaxed completely. "I feel so terrible. I need to apologize to Deku." You looked down at your phone. "But where is he?" As you let out a troubled sigh, your phone rang again, and the chief editor was back on the line. "I know where he is," he said brightly, "and he's just fine." "Where is he?" you asked curiously. "I'm only telling you this so that you don't worry, but he's on a plane back home right now," the editor said. "Apparently he apologized profusely to the team who brought him in and told him that now that the mission had finished early, he was going to catch a plane home and pay his own way because he missed you so much and feared that he was going to miss the birth of his baby if he stayed any longer." Tears of happiness and love fluttered down your cheeks, and you made a little hiccuping sound. "Oh, lovely," the editor chuckled sympathetically. "Don't cry." "I'm so sorry, I'm just so happy and emotional, and I have an amazing husband who loves me and—" you wailed. The editor chuckled again softly. "You do. He will be landing shortly. He took the flight last night to get here as quickly as possible," the editor said. "I'll keep working to clear his name, but it looks like my footage has already gone viral, and the views on my online post about Deku's loyalty have shot through the roof. My boss is very pleased." "I bet," you chuckled, wiping your eyes. "Thank you so much again. You've been so helpful. Can I offer exclusive pictures of our little girl when she's born?" "I would be most grateful for those," he exclaimed. "Yes, please. You've saved my ass yet again." No, you've saved mine today. Call it even," you said with a smile. "You're a gem. All the very best with the labour. I know you'll do amazingly," he said before ending the conversation and hanging up. You decided to order food in again, in anticipation of Deku's arrival, and happily tidied up as best you could with belly out front, waiting for him to come home. As you walked into the lounge, you heard a car pull up outside the house and looked out to see Deku hopping out of a taxi and quickly paying the driver before grabbing his bags and running for the front door. You grinned from ear to ear, and as he opened the door you flung your arms around his middle and called his name. "Yin," he said in surprise. How did you know it was me?" "Well, it's a long story, but the short of it is I tried to call and text you and you didn't reply, so I got worried, and then I found out that you'd left early to come home." "Ah," he gasped. "I'm sorry, I did forget to text you. It was supposed to be a surprise, but I should have texted you last night before I left and wished you a good sleep." "Well, it doesn't matter now because you're home and you're here," he said with a happy tear-pricked smile. "I'm home," he said softly as he put his bags down and his lips met yours. As soon as dinner arrived, you both sat down to eat and chat, and you filled Deku in on the news reports and the chief editor's help. "I'm so sorry," Deku said sadly. "I didn't even know those rumours were going around. I was already on the plane at that point." "I know," you said. "It's all okay now. You're home. I'm relaxed. I'm full of food." You pointed to the empty dishes. "And I'm 3 days away from full term." Deku smiled and reached over to place his hands on your belly. "You can come out now," he said to your belly, running his hands gently over your bump. Yes, please, you said emphatically. I want you out because you're heavy. You shared another kiss with Deku and chatted some more before going to bed, snuggling up and content in each other's arms. It was around 2 a.m. that you woke to light cramping, and you grunted as you shifted in bed to try and ease the pain a bit. It subsided quickly and you fell back asleep again, only to be woken again a few minutes later to the same cramp. You reached under your belly and held it for a second, shifting again and trying to ease the pain. It again subsided, and you started to drift off. But the second you got into a deep sleep, you woke to another cramp. Deku felt you move again, and woke, kissing you on the cheek. "Is everything okay?" he whispered raspily in a sleepy voice. "I keep getting cramps," you mumbled, rubbing under your belly again. "It's annoying." "Labour?" he gasped, sitting up and leaning over you. "No, it's just a few cramps," you said, resting your head back on the pillow. You then got another one. "Ugh," you grunted, holding under your belly and squirming to make it stop. Deku flew out of bed and grabbed the hospital bag that was sitting on the side table, running for the door and babbling something about having to get going to the hospital right now. "Izu," you called out, "you're only in your boxers." He came flying back in immediately, dropping the bag and grabbing for a pair of pants as you sat up. Hopping on one foot, he bounced around the room, desperately trying to dress himself quickly, much to your amusement. "Baby," you called, watching him struggle with his clothes. "There's no need to rush. I don't think this is labour. The cramps are light, relatively, and they aren't in any type of pattern." "Still," he said in a panic, "we need to go." "Let's just ring the hospital first and ask them," you said calmly. "They did say that if I get to the hospital and I'm not in labour, they'll send me back home again, and I don't want that." "Oh? Oh," he said, stopping to think for a second. "How are you feeling?" "Fine, the cramps have stopped." "Oh. Oh," he said, pausing a moment to think. Okay, I'll call the doctor," and he mumbled as he wandered from the room and picked up his phone. Unsurprisingly for you, you didn't get another cramp or contraction or anything for the next hour, and you and Deku sat around for a bit to see if anything else would happen. "How about now?" Deku asked you for the 100th time in a minute, his finger on the stopwatch on his phone, so he could time the contractions, even though you weren't calling them contractions. "I told you," he said, chuckling but a little bit exasperated. "Nothing. Can I go back to sleep now? I'm still tired." "I guess it's a good idea if you sleep," he said, slowly putting his phone down. "But tell me the minute you get another contraction." "I will," you promised, groaning as you struggled to stand up. "Are you coming to bed too?" "I might stay up. I can't sleep now," he replied, a sheepish grin on his face. "I'm too excited." You smirked and let out a little huff of amusement through your nose. "Okay, you stay up. I'll call it out if I need you." He nodded and stood up to give you a kiss as you passed, then sat back down in the chair, thinking deeply while you went to bed. You passed out completely, exhausted beyond any recognition. When you woke again, it was late morning, and you stretched and lifted your head to look around. Deku still hadn't come back to bed, and you wandered out into the lounge to find him fast asleep on the lounge with the TV going. The media was still in a debate over your and Deku's relationship and the pictures that had surfaced of him with Uraraka, but then there was also someone who stood up for him and pointed out the full video along with other reports about how in love he and you were, and you smiled to yourself. "That editor has done an amazing job. With one viral video he pretty much stopped everything in its tracks." Then it cut to two of the newscasters chatting together, and the female of the two was adamant that you and Deku were fine. "I trust Heroes Daily above all," she said firmly. "Mr. and Mrs. Deku have a very close relationship with the editor there, so they would have the correct information." You grinned and looked from the TV to Deku, who was still asleep. "We're fine. We're perfect. Nothing can break us apart," you thought as you held your belly in hand. As you stood there, Deku roused from his sleep and looked up at you. "Yin," he croaked. "Are you okay? Are there any more cramps or contractions?" "None," you replied, still with a big smile. "Oh," he said suddenly. I saw the reports about the photo that was circulating while I was on the mission. I'm so sorry. I didn't even realise that." "Don't apologise, it's all fine," you replied, walking over to sit next to him. "It was cleared up very quickly." He relaxed and gave you a beautiful smile then leaned across and kissed your lips. You felt your little one jump in your belly, and you instinctively reached to touch your bump, as did Deku. "I feel the movement through your body," he said softly. "That must have been a big kick." "It was," you said. "I just wanted to come out." "Let's have breakfast," Deku said. "It won't be long now. She can't stay in for too much longer." "True," you said. "Can I please have my usual for breakfast?" "Of course," Deku replied, standing up and stretching, then running a hand through his curly green locks. You watched him go, and settled back on the lounge to wait for him. The day went slowly and was very relaxing. You did a little bit of cleaning and had forgotten about all those cramps, but by 5 p.m. you were starting to feel some contractions again, and you stopped halfway down the hall to take a small breather before continuing. "Ah," you grunted as you entered the bedroom while Deku was putting some clothes away. "Are you okay?" he asked quickly as you sat down on the bed holding your belly. "Yeah, I think I've overdone it today. I'm just getting a few cramps." "Lie down," he instructed. "The doctor said to rest as much as possible." You nodded and lay down on your side, panting a little with discomfort. Deku watched you nervously as he continued to pack things away, but you settled and chatted to him while he worked. Another 10 minutes later you got another cramp, and you went quiet for a second to try and stretch it out. Deku again watched you. Once the contraction stopped, it wasn't a very long one, you kept talking like usual, but again, another 10 minutes passed and you felt another cramp. "That's the third one," Deku commented when you grunted with discomfort. "I wouldn't say it's anything though," he replied dismissively. He didn't say anything in return, but just kept an eye on you. Although the cramps were light, they were coming every 10 minutes, and Deku was starting to get excited once more. This could be it. This could be the real labour this time. He was hoping it was. He was beyond plus ultra excited to meet his little girl. The next contraction came, and you looked up at him with a strange expression on your face. What is it?" he asked, his eyes studying your face. I need to go to the bathroom," you said, letting him help you off the bed. You waddled in and closed the door, then walked to the toilet and sat down. Pulling your underwear down, you looked in to see a small mucus ball in there, and your eyes widened as you remembered reading about the early signs of labour, a small mucus plug coming loose and falling out. You quickly wiped it up and dropped it into the toilet, while Deku waited impatiently with worry outside the door, wondering what was happening. After cleaning yourself up, you walked out, almost walking smack bang into Deku. "Oh!" you gasped with surprise. "Is everything okay? What happened? Do we need to go now? What happens if we don't go now?" And "Itsu," you said quickly. "It's fine. I think I may have started labour, but it will take a while to get actually going and to actually have the baby." "You started? How do you know?" "It's a little yucky, but I've lost my mucus plug," you said with a small grimace at the thought. "What's that?" he asked curiously. "It's just, something that comes out when you've started to dilate," you said diplomatically. He didn't need to know all the ins and outs of the mucus plug. "Dilate? You're already going to have her?" he gasped. "No, not yet," you replied, grunting when another contraction came. "We have to go now," Deku said in a panic. "No," you huffed, grabbing the back of his shirt as he turned to run. "We need to wait until I'm at least 4-minute contractions." 4 minutes? Oh, 4 minutes. Where's my phone? I need to time them." You let him go and get his phone, and then you straightened once the contractions washed over. The next few hours were torturously slow for you. The hours ticked by, and by 10 p.m. you were at 5-minute contractions that were regular and getting stronger, and you were exhausted. "I just want to sleep," you groaned, sitting down on the end of the bed, then laying down on your side. Deku watched you with a worried look on his face. If she's tired already, that's not going to bode well for later on. He paced anxiously back and forth, watching you. You groaned and puffed as another contraction came, and he hovered around, not knowing what to do. Should I call the hospital?" he asked softly. "No, I don't feel like I need to go there yet. I'm just tired," you panted. Deku leaned down and kissed you on the forehead, noting you were a little sweaty from the constant contractions over the last few hours. Another 2 hours passed, and it was on the stroke of midnight that you definitely needed help with the contractions. Whenever one took over, you would grab onto something and do the breathing exercises that you were taught during the labour classes, but it was getting harder to focus on doing them correctly, and most of the time you'd forgotten to breathe properly and just panted rapidly, or you'd hold your breath instead. Remember to breathe, Deku said softly. Hurts, you hissed through gritted teeth. Okay, we're going to the hospital now, Deku said, arranging for a taxi on the app to take you both. The taxi arrived 20 minutes later, and Deku helped you out of the house and into the waiting car as he got your bags and other gear, and then you were off. It was a hard ride there, and you grabbed for Deku's hand, giving it a death squeeze every time a contraction hit. The pressure you were applying to his poor hand was similar to the grip that you'd had on him in the plane when you went to the Todoroki's family island, and his mind compared the two with mild reservations about the pain. Once at the hospital, you were ushered into the birthing unit and the nurses got to work getting you set up with the pain medication. First you had the gas, then they offered you some injectable medication, which you took readily, and then another 3 hours later, you weren't coping and asked for the epidural. Poor Deku watched nervously from the sidelines, trying to be there for you as best he could, but the sound of you in labour, coupled with you in tears and the way you cried out and crushed his hand, were hard on him, and he was tearing up and fretting something awful. You can do it, he whispered shakily, as he let you crush his hand with another contraction, your deep cries of agony breaking his heart and drowning out his encouragement. Doctors came into the room and spoke to you, going through the formalities of the epidural and letting you know what would happen. You nodded in understanding, but Deku could tell you weren't really listening. You had mentally internalized too far and were no longer present in the outside world. You got more contractions as they were still trying to prepare you for the epidural, and just before they administered the numbing agent, the senior nurse stopped them. Wait! She reached under the sheets in between your legs and felt around a little bit, then shook her head. She's 9 centimeters. Oh, the doctor said. You're too late. Deku looked from nurse to doctor in bewilderment. What does that mean? He asked nervously. Just then you cried out, grabbing for his hand, and the nurse felt your belly. Do you feel like you need to push in? She asked. Yes! You yelled through a cry. Okay, push! She encouraged. You bore down, crying out again with your efforts. Once you stopped pushing, the nurse encouraged you with her words. That was great, Yin. I need another one of those when you're ready. She ducked her head down to look under the sheet and between your legs, and spoke lowly to the other midwife beside her. Deku watched on, patting your forehead down with the cool flannel whenever you got a break between your pushes. That's it, Yin, that's it, the nurse called again. We can see the head, keep going. Only a few more pushes to go. One more. You bore down again, screaming out as you pushed with all your might. Yes, the nurse called. Yes, here it comes. Last push. You pushed again, almost crushing Deku's hand as you gave the last push your all, and then all of a sudden your little girl was in the midwife's hands, and she pulled her out from under the sheet that was covering your lower half. The nurses, midwives, and the doctor in the room all congratulated you and Deku, while quickly attending to your newborn, while you just panted in awe, and Deku burst into tears, reaching over to hug you in the bed. It was a beautiful moment, as the hardest thing in your life so far had come to completion, and you just lay there in shock. The nurses cut the cord and took your little girl away to weigh her, while you were being attended to, and once you and her had been cleaned up, she was brought back in for the first feed. She's beautiful, the nurse praised you. Do you have a name? Deku looked at you, waiting for you to speak, and you smiled wearily at him, then at the nurse, as you cradled your newborn. Kiru Midoriya. And that was the final chapter of Serendipity. Thank you all so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed this story. If you did, stay tuned for the next one coming soon.